Oh, there we go. Press. Oh, but there we go. Pressing buttons. All right, where were we? About halfway through this. Let's get back to it.
All right, Ethan, we're back from the break, and we're getting into it a little bit, but MIT. Did you graduate high school early?
No.
That's surprising. That's real surprising. So did you go straight to MIT from high school?
I did. I was, yeah,
Why
I guess
MIT?
Why MIT? I was considering early high school. I had two potential paths I wanted to go down. One is I was actually obsessed with being a doctor, um, in high school. Like I really wanted to go be a brain surgeon. It was like one of my lifelong dreams to do, and so A&M ran this program called InMed, where you get an engineering degree and a doctorate, and I wanted to go basically build robots to help people do surgery as a surgeon. And then the other...
Hold on. Where do you come up with this as an 18-year-old kid? 17, 18-year-old? Well, actually, you said early high school, right?
Yeah, this would have been...
Where are you coming up with this shit? I mean, most, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids are not thinking about building robots to do fucking brain surgery. I mean, I don't even think that was a thing when you were 15. What is that, 7 years ago?
It was, people were talking about it. I don't know. I've been obsessed with the brain for a while. So it's another funny story about me. When I was in 5th grade, I stole my mom's credit card, borrowed my mom's credit card, and I went and bought a microscope.
Borrowed.
Sheep's brains.
I'll put it back, Mom.
Talked to my mom.
Where do you get a sheep's brain?
Online. Because they sell them for med schools and stuff. And so I talked my sister into helping me. And she and I were like, okay, we're going to put out a YouTube video where we dissect a sheep's brain. And I think I somehow convinced my teachers to count it as a project that I had to do. My mom, she opened the freezer and put sheep's brains in there. And I think that, anyway, it was a long story. But that YouTube video is out there somewhere of my sister and I, dissecting a sheep's brain back in the day.
That's out there?
I'm sure it is.
Do you have it?
I don't. I can find it.
Send it in. I want to overlay it during this.
I'll try to. It's pretty embarrassing, but I'll
that's
try
cool.
to.
That's your story, though. You got to think of this. Either this is a fucking legacy piece, even though you're only 22 years old. You got to think this is your life story, how you think, who you are, And so, if you have kids one day, and if they have kids, and they have kids, I mean, they're gonna watch this.
That's true.
You know what I mean? This is your legacy piece.
All right, I'll send in the video.
So,
no, it's true. I appreciate you. It's funny. I don't talk or even think that much about all this stuff. So it's fun to sit down and talk about. So yeah, I mean that was one obsession, and then the other one was what I ended up doing, which was going and focusing on the war side, either fighting or building things. COVID is what changed it.
Oh.
So I had gotten in summer after sophomore year.
He did a 1-2.
Program to go and do medical research with UT Austin.
Oh, I didn't eat.
I got taken that so seriously, getting into that, was super excited. COVID happened my sophomore year. That all shut down. And so that's when I got into, truly got into knife making, is I had nothing to do with but build knives. And I totally would have gone the other path. But then going out of senior year, I really wanted to build the company. I thought that was super important. But these trends in warfare also always usually take decades to play out.
So hold on, when did you start mock? How old were you? Were you in high school or middle school?
High school.
High school?
High school.
Okay.
High school. I'm just saying engineering.
Gotcha.
And wanting to go fly, kind of the two focus areas were either kind of health or defense.
Okay.
And it's hard to say exactly when I officially started mock. Our first programs I was doing under Blue Oak Iron Works. I think the first capital we raised was under Blue Oak Iron Works, which was my knife making, furniture building.
So did you just, is mock a new company, or did you just keep morphing the company?
I kept morphing it, so it went from mock to Trident. Trident was a horrible name. One of our VCs was pushing to call it Trident. Trident's bad for a number of reasons, and then it became mock after I dropped out.
I mean, every Navy SEAL business in the world is fucking Trident.
Exactly.
Okay.
I didn't know that. But then I started talking to people, and they're like, "Are you a Navy SEAL?" No. All right, don't fucking call your company Trident.
Gotcha.
That makes sense.
Gotcha. I was confused there.
Team guys are original and not so original at the same fucking time. My first company was Trident Security Solutions, which is morphed into this.
That's great. That's great. So yeah. Anyway, all that being said, I really wanted to go for it. So I figured this trend was going to take a while to play out because this was pre-Ukraine. So I wanted to go fly for 8-10 years and then go start the company.
Hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt. How old were you during COVID?
I was 16.
16 years old? I mean, how did that affect you? I mean,
Wow.
people talk about how younger generations were affected by COVID, wearing masks
I bet you he went out and he actually started learning more. Guaranteed.
for 2 years, not being able, you missed out on a lot. That affected your generation going through COVID.
I think my story was probably different than most. I mean, it was actually a net good thing for me, I'd say. I got nothing out of school when COVID was happening. Like, I don't think I logged into a single class. But I'm an obsessive person, so all it did was create like a total vacuum for me to work on whatever I wanted to work on. And so, yeah, I just got obsessed with making things and about learning about engineering. And
Yep.
right?
Yep.
I think on average it's probably pretty bad. Like if you're, I was fortunate because I was in a place where I could go forge knives. Like most people can't go into their backyard and forge knives, right? I got super into hunting. I bought a crossbow and would just go hunt deer around. Like that's not something that.
And it really is so amazing. I feel like I've learned so much once I got outside the realm of academia. Spend so many years in school, and then you get outside and you're like, holy hell. It's like, don't get me wrong. Like, I learned a lot in school, but how much I could actually apply to the real world, plus how much of it actually fascinated me, was not even 5% of what I learned, and how much I could actually apply to the world. I really can't even think of anything off the top of my head other than like my philosophy classes. But yeah, that's sad.
That most people can do. And so if I were trapped in a city during COVID, it would have been a very, very different story, and I think it would have been really, really bad for me. But honestly, without COVID, I never would have gotten into engineering in any of the same way I did. It basically just gave me time to go and find the things that I actually think are important and that I actually
Yeah.
Wow. How do you think it affected the majority of your generation?
Like,
I think
how many times did a teacher tell you like the world is fascinating? And you're like, yeah. You hear that from all the students. The world is fascinating, but you're not going to find it in school. Like, you're not going to find it in just the normal public school system. You're going to find it, like, honestly, as dumb as it sounds, you find a lot of it on YouTube. Like, you can find some really, really good documentaries and people who've made their own channels. Given, you got to make sure that it's right, make sure that, all the facts are right. And it's hard to tell if there's any way to even check that. But at the same time, it's, how do you do that with normal curriculum as well? A lot of the stuff you're being taught, like the food pyramid we were taught in school, how did that one turn out?
people spent a lot more time on social media. I think it kind of kicked off this wave of ultra short form content, and which is I think the most destructive thing for my generation. TikTok and Reels and everything else. I think it created a lot of isolation, right? People just couldn't see their friends, and it's also like the I was younger than the people that got horribly affected. The people that really affected is if it's your senior year of high school or your freshman year of college, it was really, really bad. Because folks a few years older than me, if you're freshman year of college, you're not meeting friends, you're not going to class, but you're at an age that is so existentially important. I think it really disrupted those people, and then probably equally bad, if not worse, is the senior of high school. Like, that's such an important time to basically tie up your childhood. Going to graduation, your last year of football, all this stuff.
I mean, a lot of people think the even younger than that, were more affected because you're picking up, you're picking up how to read facial expressions, body language, shit like that, and fucking mask over the face. I mean, it masks.
Yeah.
Literally masks it.
For sure. Yeah, no, it's bad. Bernie was the first school district in the country, I think, to go back to school.
No kidding.
I think don't quote me on that, but we're one of the first, if not the first, because I went back in August of 2020, so it was also like significantly less destructive. But if you're in New York and you missed a year and a half of school, online school, no one got anything out of it. Like, it set you back at least a year and a half, probably more, because you got out of routine. Because even once you got back, it was still disruptive. And so folks also, if you assume you have 12 grades of high school to learn, folks are missing 2 of those 12 in many cases.
So you're forging knives.
Yes.
All right. We can move past it now.
Yeah. Anyway, going to MIT, I really wanted to fly, and then if you're going to fly, you should be studying aerospace engineering. MIT was the best school for aerospace engineering, and then I was super fortunate to get a full ride scholarship to go and do that with the Air Force. And then I did play football in high school. I should say I'm quite bad at football.
Nice.
I
I sucked at basketball.
They don't offer you before you get in. Like, it's D3. They actually usually have a winning record. They do fine, but they refuse to give offers because they like MIT. One of my favorite things about it is there's no like ulterior motives in the selection process. So they don't look at donations. They don't look at background. They certainly don't look at sports. But getting in, then I was able to go play football, which was awesome. Like, football is such a good way in college to just make friends and have a friend group. And so between football being the best at aerospace engineering and then most importantly the Air Force side, MIT had the highest basically pilot selection rating of the non-academies. And so I went there after signing though, so I basically senior year of high school, December, decided to go. Well, Ukraine starts that next spring. And pretty immediately once Ukraine started, we started learning how quick unmanned systems were going to play out, right? Like you start seeing quads hit tanks.
Mm-hmm.
Even you start seeing drones like I was talking about since forward for artillery. And so I got to MIT, and at that point the decision was between like, do you stay for 4 years and then a year or two of pilot school and then get in 27, 28, or do you just decide to drop it? And one is basically like you 100%
Oh,
impact on what you care about. The other one is like you have a very, very small chance of having quite a large impact on what you care about. And so started talking with friends, went early for football preseason. While I was there, there's a thing called UROPS, which is basically undergraduate research opportunities where a student can work for a professor to research something. I actually convinced a professor to take on my research so that I could work for him and get myself funded. This is why we focus on hydrogen so much early, is because you can only do that on science stuff. So, like, they're never going to go do that on like regular plane engineering. They're never going to go do that on balloons, certainly. The hydrogen stuff was actually interesting for them, and so I convinced them to do that. Well, that professor pretty immediately realizes that the university's not going to fund him to fund a kid to build guns on campus. So they kicked me over to Lincoln Labs, which is MIT's basically research department. I think by dollars, it's the biggest military lab. It's where they develop a lot of the really interesting stuff, specifically on the RF side. So there was actually a period of time where I was planning on dropping out and working at Lincoln Labs. This is still freshman semester, first few weeks of school, trying to figure that out. Well, the labs, I went and talked to them and I was like, hey, walk me through technologies you've developed that have actually made their way into the hands of the warfighter. Like, you're spending all this money, where does it actually have an impact? They're like, well, usually it takes 15, 20 years. Right. And then the issue is I couldn't even develop it and then take it from the lab and commercialize it to have an impact on the battlefield because they own your IP. And so,
Shit.
yeah, like literally if you machine like one part at Lincoln Labs, that IP is now owned by Lincoln Labs.
Wow.
And so that suddenly wasn't an option. And then I decided to drop out pretty early into the semester, but I like was already paid to be there for a semester. I wanted a semester to like make friends, learn how the system works, recruit for the school, and so went through the rest of the semester, and then left after that.
What did you think of MIT? I mean, now you're around. Now I would think you're around a lot more people that are on your level.
Yeah, I mean,
I would think that you can talk about things that you're excited about, and other people will understand what you're talking about rather than trying to explain it to me. I mean, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way towards anybody. It's just the fucking way it is.
No, I will say it was both exciting in certain ways and also not that exciting in certain ways. Like, you learn that people are just people. And like, having hired a lot of engineers at this point, the top 5% coming out of any school, like any school on earth, are always going to be as good, if not better, than the bottom 50% at a place like MIT. And so I would say, look, like the actual raw horsepower and IQ is not that meaningfully different. The thing that is very different is it's a total machine of a culture, and that you're expected to step in and work 20 hours a day and just obsess about honing your craft of engineering. And you're thrown into this environment where you get your ass kicked. Like, you're used to being the smartest person, and suddenly you wake up and you're an idiot. It's fantastic. It's like all you can ask for. And then there's so much funding that goes into, hey, what's your obsession? Okay, we're going to fund that and go and develop that, right? And so that's what's great about MIT. I'd actually say, like, the people themselves are very similar. And that part I loved. I mean, it's not perfect. Don't get me wrong. There's obviously politics. There's obviously all these different things. But I don't know if there's another environment on Earth like MIT in that way. Like, even having hired from these other schools at this point, the specific thing that sets me apart is just the obsession with first principles, and then everyone is expected to just work so insanely hard. And that was fantastic. So I loved MIT. And then the MIT football team was a really interesting group of humanity. Most of my best friends were made during that 6-month period, because you've got people who, like, sit at that intersection, which is a lot of fun. So it was a great school. I mean, if I was going to go back to college, I'd certainly go there.
Oh, you can select them out. I'm just right in front of my freaking face. I was like, can you not?
Honestly, it had nothing to do with me wanting to build a company.
Now we know.
Like, there are real problems that we have to go solve. And me entering in 2028 I didn't at least think it was as meaningful as, like, going and jumping in 2022, 2023, going headfirst into these problems.
Were you passionate about Ukraine?
Very.
Why?
Very. Look, I think it's a clear war of good and evil, and you can separate all the politics that have infused since then. But you had Putin, whose clear objective evil in the world, invade another sovereign country, and so I'm still very passionate about Ukraine.
Right on.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's not perfect. No country's perfect.
I just don't find it so black and white.
Like, it's also very different. Like, going, like, meeting the people whose, like, sons were killed, going and, like, actually, like, experiencing it. It's a very, very, like, real war that's happening. That thousands of people die every day that are not fighting for anything other than their own freedom. And I think if us as the West can't separate politics out from that and say, like, objectively they're like mothers whose sons are dying, objectively they're 22-year-olds who are going to go die in the trench for their own freedom, that is something worth supporting. No, I think a lot led into the war, and obviously the U.S. support of the war. I'm very happy to talk it through, but, like, Ukraine itself, it's one of the things I'm most passionate about in life is the sovereignty of Ukraine. Like, I think, look, I think Ukraine's going to go down.
All right.
We'll see. The history's still being written, but if they push off this invasion, you're talking about a level of, like, the Alamo style, like, stepping up against a bigger adversary and punching back that history hasn't seen many times. And
But it was a lot of NATO. It was a lot of NATO.
From the actual people that live in that corrupt system that are fighting for their freedom.
I'm not judging you.
No. It's I absolutely.
Genuinely curious
Absolutely.
on why you're passionate about that as a 18, 20-year-old kid.
Yeah, and feel free to judge me or to push back. I think this is, like, why we have these conversations. Not that I'm saying you are. I'm just saying I'm happy to talk about it. But yeah, look, like, I think that's why I'm doing all this, right?
Gotcha.
This is why the company exists. That's why I view myself as on this earth, is to, like, protect for individual sovereignty.
It's a good purpose.
Thank you.
Are you more passionate about China, Ukraine, or I'm sorry, Russia, Ukraine, or China, Taiwan?
Definitely China, Taiwan. I would say at an individual level, it's probably pretty similar. I would say if you're talking about the impact it will have on the future of sovereignty, China, Taiwan is orders of magnitude more important.
I'm definitely with you on that one. Okay, so Ukraine was your motivation. That's your purpose at the time.
In more ways than one. So one is, like, obviously care about the sovereignty of Ukraine. Two is it's such a crazy glimpse into how big of a change we need to expect from unmanned systems, right? Like, we're just in the very early ages of unmanned warfare.
It is fucking crazy, isn't it? I mean, I spent 14 years in and out of combat zones all over the Middle East, and I mean, I can't even remember. Did Ukraine kick off before we actually even pulled out of Afghanistan? I think it did.
Yeah. 2022.
And so the stuff
I had to check.
those two
Not that, but
conflicts, those wars are just fucking wild.
Yeah.
It's insane.
undo.
Absolutely. And then the thing, and so that's really what it was about Ukraine, as much as the sovereignty is like, this is a crazy glimpse, and this is the first true near peer conflict we've seen in so long. And so you have to stop thinking about drones as in the context of terrorists, and start thinking about drones in the context of nation states sending hundreds of thousands of them against each other. And we're just
Oh, yep, that's right.
like, you have to keep in mind the actual level of tech being deployed on
There we go. We got it.
It's still quite rudimentary. Like, if you look at probably the two most important unmanned systems, this isn't an attack on the Ukrainians, right? Like, they're doing an incredible job. It just takes years to build technology. But you've got quadcopters that are these super simple, like, 4 electric motors, directly manually controlled, either over radio or through fiber optics, that are slow, usually less than 100 miles an hour, right? That aren't very maneuverable, and that aren't designed that well for manufacturing. Like, these things are still hand assembled, so you're dealing with lower volume and lower sophistication than we can expect. And same with the Shahed. Like, if you go and look at a Shahed, you're dealing with like a fiberglass airframe. The original ones were literally powered by like Vespa, like piston-driven engines. The autonomy package is horrible, but it's so effective. Like, that's the thing. I'm not taking away from how effective it is. Like, that stupidly simple quadcopter will go and take out the most sophisticated tank anyone on Earth can build. Right? You look at Operation Spiderweb. I mean, you look at those things taking out hundreds of millions or billions of strategic air power on the runway. And so if you imagine the type of tech we deal with in the day-to-day, and you imagine that being applied to unmanned systems, and you imagine what it actually looks like when the true force of innovation meets unmanned systems, which is happening today. It wasn't happening 50 years ago.
There it is.
Far off that curve in a way that is just terrifying. And so that's why Ukraine was such an eye-opener. Is like, these are still super unsophisticated systems that are totally defining the only near-peer conflict that we've seen in recent history. And so give it 5 years, certainly give it 10 years, and the level of effect these systems will have is just so huge.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine what this is going to turn into.
Yep.
But when was the first time you went to Ukraine?
I've only been once. I went. I don't remember the year. Probably 2023, 2024.
What were you doing?
Just working on mock stuff. I mean, I didn't do a ton there. I didn't spend that much time there. I don't want to, like, it's not something I'm trying to brag about or anything. Like, I wanted to. For me, it was like, how can you get as close as possible to the war that's actually happening?
How did you get there? You just go?
I was at a conference in Poland and met some Ukrainian Foreign Legion guys.
Okay.
Oh boy. Run. 3 of them and a 1-star.
Awesome. I love that shit.
It was crazy eye-opening.
What'd you see?
So I went to one of the schools where they train these operators, and you literally pull people off the street, you put them in front of
Oh, I know bullets. Ah, no bullets.
how to do that, and suddenly you've got someone that can take out a target 20 miles away for $400. Like, that's crazy. I went and saw a factory where they're making these things, and you've got things that are destroying $50 million aircraft that are assembled by, like, Ukrainian grandmothers, right? Like, that's what asymmetry means, right? And so, and then you actually meet people. Like, it's very humanizing to actually talk to the people that are fighting the conflict. So yeah, I mean, nothing ultra profound, but like for me, it's so easy to sit in VC land and, like, pump up your valuation, do all these different things, raise money from VCs who have never fought in war. I'm not a war fighter. Like, it's very easy to get separated from the actual problem. But if you truly want to solve issues, like, you have to get as close as possible to people actually using your systems at the end of the day.
Wow. So you knew you were going to build drones before you knew it
Yeah.
right away.
Yeah.
How many years did you spend at MIT?
A semester.
That's it?
Mm-hmm.
A semester?
So I filled out the form to drop out like a handful of weeks.
Oh, that's right, because, yeah, you dropped out.
What, I mean, so what convinced
What?
you?
Yeah.
Holy shit. So you're
That early.
schools in the world, and a couple weeks in, you're like, fuck, this isn't for me.
I think, and I was clear with everyone about this. I expected failure. Like the numbers I was running is like, of course it's crazy to say you're going to go and build these systems, build these factories, do these different things. But if there's a 1 in 100,000 chance that you can ship hundreds of thousands of platforms over the next 5 years, like you have, again, you have to do it. Like the median's certainly lower, but like the average, the net expected value of like going and dropping out. And so I fully expected to run out of money for it all to fail. I was pretty clear about that, but if there's a chance of making a difference, you have to jump in and do it. And so I wasn't excited about it. It wasn't like I was sitting there hating MIT. It wasn't like I was like super excited.
You just felt a duty.
I'd say so.
Oh, damn. Wow. Man.
Respect. I understand that. Yeah, respect.
Look, I mean, there's still a very long ways to go. Like I'd say I still feel that way. Like for our company, for the military-industrial base writ large, like we're still in the early days of actually adopting this correctly. And so it's been about 3 years now since I dropped out and decided to do that. And I think we still have decades of work left to do if we actually want to see that impact.
Man, you are a cool dude.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So what are you working on? Where do you go after you drop out of MIT?
So a few of my buddies decided to do the same.
Yeah.
I was super excited about.
Football team?
Football, and then 2 of the other sort of Air Force ROTC people. There's something called Campus Preview Weekend. Or not Campus Preview Weekend, it's a different thing. What's it called? Damn it. Now I'm forgetting the name for it. MIT gives everyone off all of January. And you're expected to go and work on basically a project. And so all the students were off for like a month, which was awesome. Because I didn't have the money to support anyone other than myself, so I literally couldn't have people drop out with me. But a bunch of my buddies and I decided that like this month we're just going to sprint on working on these problems, and then after that it would just be me because I couldn't support any of them dropping out. And so for that month it was about the size of this room, a workshop in Charlestown, like the cheapest real estate in Boston we could find, and just started building a bunch of different things. So we built quadcopters, we built a gun, we built basically a Shahed.
A what?
It's a type of, so this was Shahed is like the Dorito drone that the Russians used like crazy. This was actually pre-Shahed. And so we built what ended up being
Dorito drone?
It was used like crazy in Ukraine.
No kidding.
What else?
Deciding what to build?
That's kind of my main job, is to ideally be as
Walk me
smart
through
as
the process. Why are you building guns and drones? What do you do? How do you decide which one you're going to do first?
Yeah, so you have to try and war game what a battlefield looks like in the future. It's a very, very hard thing to do, and I won't say I'm necessarily good at it, but you have to basically understand technologies that exist, understand the current state of warfare, and imagine like what the best possible system is in the future. And that's your kind of first optimization. The issue is you have kind of 2 other optimizations.
How do you do that? Is that internal thought? Is that discussion? Is that whiteboard? What is that?
All 3, in massive volumes. I mean, again, that's why I went to Ukraine, and obviously I grew up having these conversations with my family, talking to engineers, talking to warfighters, basically putting together this model of like what is if tech were full throttle, what would this look like? Now the issue is there are kind of 2 other optimizations that have to sit parallel to that. The first is what will the government actually procure? And this is the one I understood least well at this time. Like even if a technology is better, if the government can't procure it in time and can't train on it in time, it's completely useless. And then for me, I don't have the budget of the United States government. Right? Like
Oh my god, there's another one. Oh, of course there is.
So for me, all a company is
I was trying to fight him solo, bro.
right? So for me, if I want that lever to have any real momentum behind it, I have to make money from my investors to keep raising more capital. And so those are kind of the 3 main optimizations. Is like what works in warfare, what can the warfighter actually adopt in time, given politics, given training, given all these different things, and then what can I as a company actually make money to build a machine that keeps compounding this. And then at the time, I had no idea what would actually like my algorithms comparing those three things were quite bad, and I think we kind of knew that, which is why we took such a broad aperture. So literally in that 1 month, you've got quadcopters, you've got guns, you've got fixed-wing drones, you've got balloon stuff. We built a hydrogen electrolyzer. We did some aluminum-fueled.
Hydroelectrolyzer?
It sounds more complex than it is. You basically take water, you shock it, and you separate the hydrogen and oxygen, and then you recombust that for guns,
Okay.
Or for air travel or other things. We built aluminum fuel that also does that. So you take aluminum, you remove the oxide layer, you put it in water, and then it rips basically the oxygen off of the water and produces hydrogen. So we developed some of that fuel. Worked on like a afterburning electric ducted fan, all different stuff. Like
How many guys are doing this with you?
there were 5 of us.
This shit's all happening in 1 fucking month?
We didn't sleep.
What?
It was a lot. It was a lot. And yeah, small budget. We were all sleep deprived. Yeah, it was a good month though.
Sounds like it.
But again, we were a lab at this point because we had no idea what we were
Oh, elixir. I thought it was like a drink. I was like, what?
actually build things. Let's ourselves start to learn what it means to be good engineers. Because again, you're learning all this theory, and I had built a few things, and they had built a few things, but now you actually have a bit more of a budget to start doing it. And then from that, then you can take it to the warfighter, right? Because if I call someone in the Pentagon, I'm like, hey, I want to have a conversation about something I'm working on, and they say, cool, what do you have? And I show them a spreadsheet or a slides. That's very, very different than like, hey, here's this video of this thing flying. And so part of it is also like, you never know what the Pentagon's going to take seriously unless you have something that makes them take it seriously enough to give it another pass. And then from there, they all went back to school, and it was just me for the next semester. And this was a really hard time. Like, this is probably the closest the company ever came to not working. Because we had all this work, but they'd all gone, and at this point I was doing everything in the business. I was doing the sales, I was the janitor, I was still pushing the engineering along as much as I could, and they would work on the weekends or after school. But it's MIT, like they had a lot of coursework and other things to do. But I mean, super grateful we were able to find investment capital at that point from a couple different folks. That's when Sequoia invested. That's when 1517 did another round. It was a good time, but it was later. Like it was like after like 4 or 5 months. There are all these like
Where are you learning to pitch? Or do they have recruiters? They probably have recruiters all around MIT.
yeah, they hear about it and they ask you for a meeting and they come to the factory and
Gotcha.
look at stuff.
Does that make you nervous?
Not really.
Didn't?
I don't get nervous in conversations. Like I love conversations. I get
nervous you're gonna get taken advantage of by a shark.
No, I can look out for myself. Folks have tried, and I've beat them back to the best I can. You can't. I don't know. I like to avoid being nervous about things.
I'm just curious.
No, I get nervous. My fears are usually more existential than they are micro. Like I don't know if I've ever been afraid of a pitch meeting or afraid of like a given test because the stakes are so high. You almost you're gonna do everything you can, and if that's not enough, it's not.
He got me. It's the double hit.
About that fact. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does.
But yeah. Anyway, we raised capital then.
It's a tremendous amount of confidence in yourself.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's not though. I guess is the other thing I'll say. Like I'm not saying I expect success. I'm just saying I'm going to do everything I can, and the results will be what the results are. Because you would go insane in any other way. Like there's nothing actually inherently that painful about company building. Like I think there's this narrative spun up by CEOs that company building is like this incredibly painful, existentially worrying thing, and it can be at times. But if my goal, and I'm not great at this, but my goal is like all company building is conversations. All company building is like working at a computer. It's not like I'm being shot at, right? Like it's actually like so much less existential. You have to try and separate the two as much as you can.
Man, I think the opposite. I think building a company's fucking hard.
Yeah.
Everything I've done, I'd rather be
Oh, I saw it coming.
more comfortable in that situation.
That might be.
The dodo got me. 'Cause I had no health.
Yeah, it's challenging, and the odds are very, very slim. But it's not personally dangerous. It's not like you're having to, I don't know.
I get what you're saying.
But so then we raised capital, and that was a big time, because then all those people were able to drop out with me, and we were able to scale the company. So then after that semester, we went and got 2 houses down in Austin, and we had some stupid numbers like 30 or 35 people from MIT and Harvard move down to Texas for that semester, and all living in 2 houses. We worked in one of the houses.
Holy shit.
So we put up a bunch of insulation in the garage, ran like a 3D printer farm. We tested jet engines in the backyard. And then the other house was like the hangout house. So we had like Lucida, which was the workhouse, and then Balcones, which was like the hangout house. We'd have a barbecue every Friday and all hang out. The AC broke in Lucida. We were running so many 3D printers and different things that the AC got overwhelmed, and it was like 90 degrees in that house for like 2 weeks. And there was like 3 of us in there building stuff.
Holy shit.
And then understandably, it was a weird environment to try and hire like professionals into at the time. So that's when we made our first hires. It's like, hey, come join this crew. It's like tough. But we got some solid stuff done, and then we're able to go and raise the A, and that's when Bedrock stepped up. Like the company would not exist without Bedrock kind of placing the vote of confidence they did on us at that point for the A, which is when we were able to go and get like a proper office. We were able to buy CNC machines. I was able to actually hire people, because even on $5 million, if you're paying engineers $200,000 a year and you need 50 engineers to do a program, you burn through your money real quick. Working on stuff like we are now, it's different, but like Viper is a vertical takeoff fighter jet. Like that's not something that you're going to build on that amount of money. And so really, until Bedrock made that vote of confidence, it was all kind of lab-esque work of like proving our competence, proving that we could do things, starting early customer conversations. And that's when the company, I'd say, like actually like truly cemented, was around that A that Bedrock led.
What were you building in the house? What were you 3D printing?
It's a good question. What all were we working on at the time? We had 3 major programs at this point. So we had Viper, which is today it's a 6.5-foot long vertical takeoff fighter jet. Back then, all we could afford was like crappy RC turbines. So it was runway launched and never worked super well. And then the next, I had this dream for something called we used to call it Medusa. It was this big tail sitter drone, so 1,000-mile range. We had 3D printers. We were never going to build that. We were building like scale demonstrations. But a tail sitter that would go take off, do ISR, do strike, and then come back and land. A big part of our philosophy has always been decentralization. Like the next era of warfare, one of the only things I think you can say with confidence right now is that strike is much easier at long range. And so defending centralized assets, ships in the ocean, aircraft on the runway, even 2,000, 3,000 miles away, becomes so much harder. And so our big emphasis, one of them, has always been on this decentralization. Like how do you have things take off vertically? How do you have things only require 2 operators so that you and I can walk outside, launch something, and be gone by the time they figure out where it came from? So that was Medusa, and then the third, and this plays into the decentralization bet, but again was a bad bet, was something called Prometheus, which was, and this was actually done up in Boston. So this work, the first 2 I described were happening down in Austin. The other one was up in Boston, was basically an aluminum hydrogen generator. And so similarly, as you look at Indo-PACOM, one of the hard problems is how do you fuel these forces going forward? And that gets even harder if your tankers are getting taken out by unmanned surface vehicles, right? By unmanned underwater vehicles, by these different things. And so one of the big things we're focused on is how do you actually generate fuel at point of need? And so that's why we were doing the aluminum hydrogen work. Now,
Oh God.
You're kind of taking a very complex problem in. You're also thinking about all the logistics and everything.
Oh God, there's another one.
you have to. That's where
Are these other companies doing that? I don't think they are.
I think
Oh, where's my bandages? I think I put them back in.
necessarily know. I mean, frankly, what they were working on at the time was better than what we were working on at the time. Because the aluminum thing was, maybe we thought through one specific niche area of the problem very well, but the rest was actually not great.
Did I not block that? What the hell? Oh, there's a guy behind me. Okay. Ah.
Things. think this new era of people working on these problems take it seriously.
Oh, I've talked to a lot of them. They're all fucking sharp. I haven't heard anyone talk about logistics.
Logistics wins wars. That is. Other than your people, it's the most important thing at the end of the day.
What is it saying? Amateurs talk tactics, pros talk logistics.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's important. The way we're looking at the logistics problem now is not requiring runways, making things as small as they possibly can be, so that they're easy to get into theater. Like glide is literally this big. You can take out a target at a very, very far range.
Which
far
one
ways
is
down
glide?
range. That's the one we kind of talk about the least. It's one of our. It's a high altitude glide vehicle to take out targets. It's a more sensitive con op, but it's this big, and you and I can deploy this here and take out a target a long ways down range.
Is
But
this
even
the thing that looks like a missile?
that's Viper. So
Okay.
we have 5 products we've talked about publicly. So one is Viper, about a 6.5 foot long vertical takeoff, kind of miniature fighter jet. And so the job of Viper is to do everything a fighter jet would do as best as can be done, while being cheap enough to mass manufacture, cheap enough to seriously go and make 1 million, 2 million of these things, and then be runway independent. And so several 100-mile range, several 600 miles an hour, can go and get up to these high altitudes, but only cost $100,000. And you and I can take it out of a Pelican case here and launch it with no ground infrastructure. And so Army is super excited about Viper or a bunch of folks are for surface to surface. But then that same aircraft you can take and go do surface to air. And so that's Viper. And then
So hold on. So is Viper? I mean, does it carry a payload, or is it the payload?
right now it is.
It is the payload.
That's not necessarily true of future versions of Viper.
Okay.
So the other thing we do with our products is every 6 months or so, I'm trying to get that down, but they're hard products to engineer. We try to completely re-architect the product. And so the current version of Viper, few 100-mile range, purely surface to surface. And I shouldn't talk too much about future, but like eventually you're dropping payloads. Eventually you're coming in and landing vertically and doing all these different things. But you're doing that at a price point that's like 10 times less than a current air-to-air missile.
Wow.
So that's a fun one. We've been flying that one for about a year now.
We could use a couple of those here.
So how does your brain work like this? I admire that.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck yes.
I'm guessing no warhead in the Viper. But I'll get you.
We'll take some more heads too. I might get that run in with the ATF. If it's
There you go. Yeah, I'll get you a Viper. 100%.
I love his boots. I just realized.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
The composite, the manufacturing guys are going to be so excited building that Viper. Yeah, they're
Dude,
gonna
you
watch
gotta
this.
come back. You gotta come back.
I'd
You
love
gotta
to.
come back.
I'll 100% get you a Viper. Do you want me to walk through the products? Is this interesting?
Absolutely. Yes. All of them. As much as you can.
Yeah, for sure. So the Stratosphere I can talk less about.
Okay.
I think it's the most important. And this is the bet we're placing as a company that is sort of most distinct and also kind of most controversial right now. I am a huge believer, and you're going to laugh, I'm a huge believer and have been since high school, that balloons are the most important tools in future conflict.
You mentioned that at breakfast.
What?
The balloon in the U.S. this week,
Yeah.
the Chinese balloon.
The
People
Mexican
started
cartel
taking
drone that wound up being a happy birthday balloon.
Exactly.
What's going on?
Sent balloons out of Lithuania. It's causing a real problem. Obviously, I got a ton of traction. So the Chinese balloon happened during that semester after I had dropped out, which was part of why we were able to get.
Oh yeah.
All these people talking about balloons, and they're like laughing, and then suddenly our entire country freaks the hell out because of balloons. But yeah, I won't go into it too specifically. But shooting a balloon down is so much harder than putting a balloon up. So much harder. And so putting a balloon up is super easy for obvious reasons, right? Like you fill it up with gas and it goes up to, let's say, 60,000, 80,000 feet. Well, to then go pop it, you've got to send a missile or a plane up to 60 to 80,000 feet. And so we talk a lot about asymmetry. Like this is asymmetry at the maximum.
I see what you're saying.
And then the interesting thing,
Oh,
there's these companies, Loon is the most famous.
that's not what I was going for.
Actually developed ways of navigating balloons. So instead of this being something that's like a party balloon that goes up, pops, disappears, basically forms a satellite they can navigate, they can station keep, they can do all these different things. And so suddenly you've got a payload at an altitude that's 100 to 1,000 times more expensive to shoot down than it is to put up. They can actually tack against wind patterns and lock in places. And then from there, there's obviously really interesting things you can do once you have a payload up at that altitude. And then the more interesting thing is if I can have hundreds of thousands of payloads, like hundreds of thousands of payloads up at that altitude at a given time. So we have Stratus payloads up at altitude, really, really interesting things you can do deploying those things at scale. And something I should mention is, like, as we talk logistics, the logistics of balloons are pretty fantastic because you can launch them thousands of miles away. And so you and I could launch a balloon here and have it up over X country, actually much quicker than I think most people realize. And so the logistics problem gets significantly easier.
And so how did you come to the conclusion that balloons would be so important?
It's just physics. You look at how cheap something is to put up, you look at how expensive it is to shoot down. You think about inventing new ways to shoot stuff down. Like, you start wargaming. Well, if you're shooting down balloons, well, what if the balloons are carrying air-to-air missiles, all these different things. So anyway, we've held that contention strongly for a while as a company. We're working very, very,
does this stuff just pop in your head? Or, I mean...
It does. I mean, a lot of this, I can't claim all of these ideas. Like, and it's always hard to tell where an idea comes from, but you're talking to hundreds of different people in a given day. Like, I didn't invent Loon, right? Like, I read the Loon library in high school. They published all of it. They published how to go and navigate these balloons. And so you go and read that, and suddenly you start thinking about these things and can extrapolate pretty quickly. And then our final two products we talk about, one is basically a much bigger jet-powered aircraft. We flew this for the first time in December. I released a video about it.
Is this the one 71 days from drawing to build?
Yes.
Dude, what the fuck? That's crazy.
I can't take credit for it.
71 days?
The engineers were working hard. And then one of the good things about our philosophy is we spend so much time on subcomponents. So, like, most primes or system integrators that go and buy other people's subcomponents and put them together, one of the big things that starts to happen as you develop a really good matrix engineering org is, like, you just take your learnings from Viper and apply it to these other aircraft. So it's actually, in many cases, the same avionics that fly our different vehicles. It'll be the same jet engines that ship on Viper and on this other platform. So it was fast.
What is this one called?
There are a few different names for it.
Dart?
No, that's a different one.
Okay.
So some folks call it Pike, some folks call it Venom. I unfortunately don't get to choose the name of my products. If I was building in commercial industry, I would say, hey, here's the name of my products. And so I developed them to a point, and the government comes up with a name for it that they like to call it. Pike, Venom, different things for different customers, and or different kind of potential customers. And then past that, we have Dart. Dart is sort of my company's best crack at unmanned system defeat. So this is us entering the defensive side. And so there will never be a silver bullet answer to taking out drones, right? You'll always have some combination of big platforms, some combination of small platforms, some combination of jamming, some combination of lasers. But our philosophy is to focus on what we think is sort of the power law important problem within that set. For me, like, our systems, when they ship downrange, don't rely on GPS or RF internally, right? And so what that means is that you really can't jam these things, right? Similarly, the way a lot of these drones right now that are slower, that are non-maneuverable, are taken out with electric-based interceptors. Well, that's not going to work once you have things like Viper that come in very quickly.
Okay, that's why I was gonna. I mean, we were talking about Eperus earlier, Leonidas, and some of those simple weaponry.
Yeah.
And that's because I was gonna say, it seems like that's the answer.
It's a different.
Takes out the drones that have the wire. Takes out drones without the wire. I think they dropped like 100 and something fucking drones, what, a month ago?
Yeah.
Or something out in the desert.
It's one of the best tools. It's great.
But, so you're saying that a weapon like Leonidas or what Eperus is developing is not going to be effective against something like Dart? Or not Dart, because that's a defensive one, but,
I know what you mean.
But an offensive one that moves at, whatever speed.
So Leonidas is a bit different. So you have jamming, and then you've got Leonidas, which is actually directed microwave. Leonidas is a great platform, and will actually take out most things. It's not a silver bullet though, because the second you turn it on, you're pumping so much power. Anyway, there's stuff we shouldn't get into there, but like there are ways to get through it, specifically with fast moving things that already have a given trajectory. And so you need the full stack. Like DJIs, the drone's most unsophisticated adversaries are going to be flying, and similar drones are quite susceptible to jam, right? So jam those. You've got something like Leonidas that is very, very, very good against a large number of assets in a given location.
DMP, correct?
It is, but it's an expensive platform. It's a very, very power-hungry platform, and then it's a platform that is pretty easy quickly to realize where it is. And so then you've got kinetic action, where you're actually going and intercepting something. In kinetic action, for certain threats, you want to go use an electric interceptor, right? So the shot heads I was describing to you, kind of low and slow, you want to go and hit that with an electric interceptor. The issue is if you've got something like Viper that's cruising up at 35,000 plus feet, coming straight down super, super fast, maneuvering along the way, you're not going to reach that with an electric interceptor, right? And so that's when you need faster moving things. The issue with guns is you're pretty good against one adversarial drone. Well, most of the targets you're defending are expensive enough to send tens of adversarial drones against. And so if 10 things are coming in at 600 miles an hour all at the same time, your gun is, for obvious reasons, not going to have time to shoot it down. And so what we're working on with DART is how cheap can you possibly get an actual missile to go and interdict these things. And so one of the issues is if you're using a drone to take out another drone, your drone ends up being as expensive, if not more expensive. And so it's not an asymmetric approach.
Gotcha.
Right? Whereas with our missiles and with missile systems, generally speaking, and I guess I should step back, what makes it so expensive is that you're using a jet engine or electric motors or other things to get up to speed, which is why I'm a fan of solid rocket motors. They're super short range, but they're super, super cheap if you manufacture them right, and you can take out adversarial assets at theoretically a price point cheaper than the asset itself, which gives you sort of your asymmetry back. And so that's what we're working on with DART, is like how cheap can you possibly get one of these surface-to-air missiles?
How fast is it though?
So right now it's in the sort of transonic, just below transonic regime. We'll end up expanding that line. We'll have supersonic ones. Like you don't want to waste a supersonic one against a subsonic asset. And so kind of the goal is to have this modular system, and you actually have different types of darts with different capabilities over time. I'm talking years in the future here. But the funny thing is we did this during the First World War. Like when air power first started, we were looking at all these different approaches to taking out aircraft. Like the F-104 is an interceptor. It's basically like a rocket with wings to go out and take out Russian bombers, right? You've got literally ideas of like nuking the air going on at the time. And what ended up winning out is solid rocket motor with aero control surfaces. That's been super, super successful, generally speaking, until the era of stealth. And so, yeah, that's our approach with DART. Is like vertically integrate this thing as much as possible, drive the cost down as much as you possibly can, optimize it to make hundreds of thousands, because you're going to need so many of these systems. Like if our adversaries are making hundreds of thousands of systems, we need hundreds of thousands of interceptors at least. And that's assuming you even know where they're going to strike. So you actually likely need significantly more if you want to have true defense.
Man, this is fucking wild, man. I mean, as you're describing all this stuff and you're talking about the decentralization, a decentralized military force. I mean, how are these things? It's just so fucking different from what I'm used to. I mean, everything is everything's centralized to a flagpole base, whether that's Kabul or Bagram or fucking Baghdad or anywhere else I've been. And then you have outstations, but it's still all centralized. And I remember when I interviewed Brandon Sang from Shield AI. I mean, that's his big thing.
Yep.
Every pickleball court in the world is a fucking launch pad. And so, I mean, when you think about sending thousands of drones in, where are you going to send thousands of drones to? Because everything's going to be fucking decentralized.
And that's
Yeah, that's a good question.
In the entire, in the entire infrastructure of global militaries has to fucking change because you can't have it centralized on the bases.
Yep.
And so what does that even look like? Does that look like we just have fucking houses in the middle of neighborhoods that nobody knows about where the roofs open up and a fucking flies out? Or I mean, in your mind, what does the future look like? I mean, you can't have anything centralized. If
Yeah.
you brought up the Russian what was that?
Operation Spiderweb.
Yeah, that one. I mean,
Yeah, what is that? No!
I think that's
You distracted me.
what happened, right?
Nah, I would have died anyway, let's be real.
On a mass scale, and
Those boars kick my ass, man.
that's where fucking TF-160 is.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We got Patterson Air Force Base. Right? You got all this. It's all centralized.
Yep. Exactly.
So we're fucked. So how do you now not only are we restructuring all the technology, but you have to rethink everything that we think we know is pretty much completely obsolete.
And this is why revolutions in military affairs are always so dangerous to great powers. It's like you as the U.S. just have so much confidence in your way of doing things. We need to start today, and I think one, you need decentralized deep strike capability. You need decentralized ISR capability. And so your actual effects downrange obviously have to be decentralized. You need to have assets that are capable of decentralized logistics, right? You can't require a tanker to refuel in air. On the ground, you can't require centralized infrastructure. You can't require a runway. We'll see how far back it marches, but one could very clearly imagine a world where manufacturing itself has to be decentralized. And so,
Man, that's even a good point.
yeah.
Or underground.
Yeah, no, it becomes real quick.
How fast do you think this all has to happen?
China's doing it real fast. So like they released a boat, I think in January, that's a commercial cargo ship that has containerized munitions. That means you have like a Connex box, like a shipping container, that can launch anti-ship missiles. So you don't know if that shipping container's on
Holy shit.
an 18-wheeler, you don't know if that shipping container's on a random cargo ship. You look at ports and you've got hundreds of thousands.
They have the biggest. It's like 95%. No, I'm sorry. It's 50% of the world's shipbuilding capacity is in fucking China, and we have what, less than 1%.
Crazy. Now,
Holy shit.
I will say I don't worry that much about that.
And my argument was, I wouldn't even say it's an argument. I remember having this exact conversation with Dino Mavroukas from Serrano and Palmer from Anduril. You know, and my big thing was, I mean, but what kind of ships are they building? Are they just building fucking cargo ships? Are they building shells? I mean, yeah, they could turn that into something, but then you're talking about these fucking shipping containers, and it's like, oh shit, like it's a fucking destroyer in disguise.
It is. But even that, I think, is too centralized. Like, if an actual conflict starts, you're taking those out pretty quickly. Because you're talking about, I mean, the missiles to take that ship out will cost a few $100,000. And
Well,
so,
yeah. I mean, maybe we take them out, maybe we don't. I mean, do we have the? But look at, I don't think that people have the heart to take it out. You can't tell which ones are good and which ones are bad. I mean, we just got a small taste of that with the boats coming from Venezuela, and you saw everybody get up in arms because we killed some fucking drug dealers. You know, now we got Chinese cargo ships, 50% of the world's ships all over the fucking place. You can't tell which ones are
that's a great point.
neutral and which ones are bad guys. So you got to take them all out. Well, there goes a shit ton of civilians.
Yeah. How does that work?
You're right.
Fucking genius. If you think about it.
It is. And the U.S. is doing the same thing.
We are?
We are.
Do we know?
Now, I don't think we're doing it as quickly and certainly not at the same scale, but we need to be. But the big thing that has to happen is on the defensive, you have to decentralize. Like, you have to make it such that if you know one of these 10 ships has these missiles on it, there's nothing militarily in striking distance that it all falls apart so quickly. And this is why I've been so worried about this for so long. And I'm not saying I have the answers. I'm saying I'm developing assets that I think will be helpful in this future world. I can't tell you what what a force structure actually needs to look like when this is the
Man,
case.
it's just wild. And then you think about all the bases that we've given up.
Yeah.
Bagram being I mean, it's still centralized, but I mean,
20. I thought it was like 15. I got it. 5 more.
consolidating at what? Where? Back here at the homeland? Where we could have had. Gave up a ton of bases in Europe. All the bases in Afghanistan. All the bases in Iraq. I mean, it's so. At least it was somewhat decentralized. Now I mean, we're probably more centralized right now than we have been since World War II.
That's true. And so we need to be working on ways of offensive and defensive assets being decentralized. Like you have to get back into doing that. And I mean, that's why I talk a lot about the stratosphere, is the range at which you can deploy these things. Allows you to act more forward. And then hopefully we find ways of doing it where you don't rely on a base to launch these assets. Like, there's nothing inherent about Viper that would require any actual fixed assets in a country you're fighting in.
Man. You really got me thinking now. This just looks... I know nothing. That's,
That's not true. No, that's not true.
I'm not scared of it. I'm admitting the old way is done. Yes. It's over. It would be, in my opinion, it's almost detrimental to be even. Maybe I won't say that, but it could. I mean, it's talking to an old guy like me who's used to the old way may be detrimental to the future, because it's so hard to switch thinking.
It is. Now, the advantage is we're not going to go from the world we have today to this different world instantly. And so the easy part is actually talking about the way things should be. The hard part is morphing the current fighting force into the way things should be. And that's where that discourse is incredibly valuable. Like, how do we bite off 1% a day on getting ourselves towards this future? Because the other thing is, like, we just sit around talking about this, but don't have any actuals of how we get there. Because the issue is, and you know this better than I do, none of these assets operate in a vacuum. So I could go and ship 10,000 Vipers, but if no one can train on them, if they don't plug into existing, like, command and control, that's useless. And so the real art of it is, like, define what the future looks like. But the real art of it is, like, how do you have taste and tact in the way that you morph our force structure over the next few years. And
How do you start?
You start by buying more of these systems, and obviously I have a conflict of interest saying that, and so everyone should take that with a grain of salt. But I also started this company because I believed in the importance of doing that. So, but you need to start by building the industrial base.
I mean, where do you store them? And I'm not even talking about your products. I'm talking about locations.
I mean,
major bases: Fort Bragg, Clarksville.
They're not that hard to store.
Camp Pendleton.
They're not. I don't think they're.
You know what I mean, though.
For sure.
Massive amount of personnel. I'm not even talking about unmanned systems. I'm talking about decentralizing fucking everything. You know, Norfolk, Virginia, San Diego, California, biggest fucking 2 naval bases in the country. You know what I mean? How do you decentralize all of this shit?
It's hard. It's hard.
That's a lot of new land buying. That's a lot of new infrastructure. That's ripping out old shit. What do you do with the old? It's a complete revamp.
It is. And what I will say, something that gives me confidence is nuclear deterrence is still strong. And so you don't have to worry as much about massive threats on U.S. soil. It's in areas of proxy war where it gets really, really dangerous. So if you're Lithuania thinking about this, you need to be thinking very, very, very deeply about decentralization, right? For the U.S., fortunately, we do have nuclear deterrence.
We also have the dome coming, supposedly.
We do, and the dome will be good for certain assets and not good for other assets. So, like, you're talking about long-range hypersonics, the dome's going to be great. When you're talking about 200 quads that launched from some random shipping container that made its way into the country, the dome's not going to do anything in its current form. Now, I would argue the dome should do something, and that's something we should expand. And I'm also not saying the hypersonics problem isn't something we need to work on. But at least for the things you and I are talking about right now, like, the dome's architected with space-based interceptors, mostly. The dome's not going to take out a quad that randomly emerges, that some Chinese foreign national launches 10 miles from a naval base.
Wow. So even that, before it's even fully developed, is fucking almost obsolete.
It's just solving a different problem. I don't think it's solving the most important problem. It is solving a real problem. But it... potentially. I mean, you're intercepting hypersonics, which is a super important problem. Because what that does is at least buys you time. Because these other assets, you're in a more, like, protracted war. But, yeah, it's certainly not a cure-all.
When you're talking about putting a payload on these systems, are you designing the payload, or are you using stuff that's already in existence?
So we have partners that we co-design payloads with right now. So the actual warhead is sort of designed specifically for our platform and manufactured elsewhere.
Gotcha.
That's kind of one of the only portions, and there's a world where we end up producing that ourselves someday too. The legislations and the regulations surrounding building warheads is horrible. Like, I can go build composites without going to the ATF or other people.
Got a history.
Wow. I love these kind of conversations. Are you going to build any guns?
As a company?
Yeah.
I'd love to.
What would you build?
A railgun.
That's a good question. It's actually not one I think about that much. I don't think we're going to build guns. If I was going to build a gun... The big problem right now is body armor. Finding ways to get through body armor. Yeah, I'm not going to give a good answer. Let me think through the problem a little bit. I think, one, you've got to have significantly... Like, this is where Anduril's actually doing incredible work. Like, I don't know if you've seen their Eagle Eye stuff, but, like...
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty good.
He came and talked about it for the first time here.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I think...
I think stuff to think about.
Oh, there's another one.
Talked about hostage rescue.
Nice.
How could you...
Looks like you're stuck. What happened?
That would speed up the action.
Just...
I think the biggest failure of these new gun systems throughout history is that you actually step too far forward. You have too much technology and you pack too much into it. Like the hypervelocity projectile work. Anyway, there's a lot of times that's been done, and so I would be... You got to have some level of increased intelligence. Like your rifle or your optic has to be able to talk to drones. You've got to be able to talk to each other. On the actual projectile side, I wouldn't get into auto aiming or any of that stuff. I think there's a long ways you could push. I mean, like the XM5, XM7, I know they've changed the name, but I actually don't hate the steel casing. Like, steel is not that hard to manufacture. If it gets you that much more muzzle velocity, go for it. I do have an issue with the recoil, especially
Steel casing gets you more muzzle velocity?
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea.
Because you get higher chamber pressure, which is super useful. And so the new combat rifle is actually partially steel, partially brass casing.
Which rifle?
XM5, XM7. I forget which of the two. It was one and then changed to the other. I think it's the XM5.
Are you talking about the spear?
Yeah.
The SIG spear?
Yep.
You like it?
I don't know enough about it. My cousin's at West Point. He shot it. He wasn't a huge fan. I think, one, I think they're having pretty bad reliability issues, and then two, I do think, I think it's too big of a round right now for. Is the force anyway? I don't know.
Well, they have a 6.8, 5.56, and a 300 blackout.
Yeah, so I think somewhere between even the 6.8 is big for a lot of
Man,
stuff.
I shot the piss out of it. Seems pretty fucking reliable.
And I'll trust you on it. Like, see, this is not my.
Well, actually, I got. but
Holy fuck.
it's been pretty reliable to me. So that's the 6.8 MCX spear from Sig Sauer. I told them you were covered, and they got all fucking fired up about it. So they wanted me to give this to you. And then, yeah, my buddy Jason over at Sig, he's a fucking huge fan of you. And then I got some buddies at Silencer Shop too, so they're gonna put a suppressor up there for you. And Sig put this optic on it, so I don't know. Maybe we should go test this out.
Let's go
See if
test
it's
it.
reliable enough for
I think hearsay says a lot. Let's go. I love this. Let's go test it.
That's
Dude.
6.8. 6.8.
That's. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man.
I really. Holy cow. And I do love that Sig's getting into optics like that. Anyway. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
I really appreciate it, and I'm sure I will take back everything I said after shooting. And
Let's go make sure it is reliable. You want to take a break?
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's go fucking break.
Let's see this thing.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. The American Revolution didn't just happen. The colonists didn't just wake up one day in 1776 and decide to declare independence from the British. There's 150 years of history that made the American Revolution possible. If you're feeling behind on that time in history, well, you're not alone. Fortunately, has a brand new free mini-series.
It feels like a Monday.
In a brand new 6-part documentary series, Hillsdale College professors will teach you the religious, political, cultural, and... Well, what'd you think?
Convert. Yeah, I had the 365 and I had the spear, two of my favorite guns, and obviously, or the Rattler, not the spear. Two of my favorite guns. I couldn't shoot the spear. I never had a spear, and so you hear all these YouTube videos where people are complaining about the recoil, and I took that at face value, which I shouldn't have. It's not bad. I mean, recoil compared to a 223 is not noticeable. And then it didn't jam a single time, and so small sample size, but reliability.
Yeah, it's interesting how not everything on YouTube's true.
Yeah, and I'm embarrassed for falling for it. So thanks thanks for.
How do you
filling
like that rattler?
I love it. I love it. I didn't bring it with me to California, so I only had it for a few months back in Texas. But
Did you put a suppressor on it?
I didn't. This is my first. I've never had a suppressor.
You've never had a suppressor? Oh,
No.
well. Silencer Shop's about to pop your cherry. Right on, man. But yeah, I've been telling Jason, I'm like, dude, send me one of these fucking rattlers. Because that's been out for a long time. I want it for home defense. But
It's good. I mean, I don't know if they're all chambered in 300 blackout. Mine's chambered in 300 blackout. It's great. I mean, it folds so small because I got a short barrel without a suppressor.
oh, nice.
It's like this big.
Nice.
I love that thing.
Well, you're a pretty damn good shooter.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're
You
welcome.
won. I went 0 for 12 on the 44.
Barely, man. And plus, I'm a former SEAL and a CIA contractor, so I should fucking beat. I should have really kicked your ass, but I didn't. And that wasn't me taking it easy. I'm just out of it. But dude, that was fun. Thanks
Great
for
time.
doing that.
Thanks for doing that. I love that. That's suppressed 22.
Cool.
It's good.
Cool. But yeah, so we just got done wrapping up, kind of talking about all the products that you're making. And the one thing we didn't talk about is, you know, you went from Boston to Austin, right?
Did.
And then Austin to
Huntington.
Huntington Beach. Why did you move from Austin? Because Austin's supposedly like a pretty,
Yeah.
it's like the new tech hub, right?
Yeah. That's what they say. I moved from Boston to Austin because I like Texas.
Because they rhyme.
Great business environment. I'm obviously from Texas. Really wanted the company to be there. It's probably different for different engineering domains. Like if you're writing software, or if you're doing pure mechanical, I'm sure it's actually quite good. The issue is for a lot of our stuff, for all the niche things, like
All right, I need a ship. What's with the ship? How do I do this?
for the real aerospace stuff, it's still LA. So we had like an applicant tracking software.
Here, wait.
About 6 months, it was like 95+% of our sort of interesting candidates were all LA based. So then for like
kidding.
yeah,
95%.
it was crazy. And so I mean for 3 months I wanted to validate the assumption. So for 3 months I'd fly to LA every Sunday. I'd fly out Saturday night, fly back Sunday night, and take like 10 interviews. And basically got a good sample size in those 3 months of people saying like, yes, I would 100% join the company, but I'm not moving my family to Austin. Especially back then. Keep in mind, we had like very, very little funding. We had no real products. It's already hard enough to hire. And so if you're suddenly having to convince people to uproot their entire families and move across 2 time zones, it's tough. So moved to LA, and it was 100% the right decision. Like, the company would not be in business today if not for doing that. It was hard. It was hard to convince people to leave, and obviously I miss Texas. But
I mean, I'm just curious, you know, with all this new potential tax, I think is it passed? Potential tax implications in California. Do you think you'll move the business again?
I may have to move myself. I mean, the thing is, the business has several locations. So,
Gotcha.
like, we have folks in DC, we have folks in Austin. Our next big factory won't be in California.
Okay.
And so it's really just our engineering headquarters that's in Huntington. But I forget the exact tax, but the taxes on unrealized capital gains, right? And so I think there's this misconception about people who start companies that they have this like vault of
I
gold
see what you're saying.
with all their money in it. When you when you achieve liquidity, maybe that's somewhat true.
I see what you're
But for
saying.
a majority of these companies, I mean, you think about Mach.
Raising capital.
You're raising capital. I mean, I'm making a very small salary. I've taken $0 off the table. I don't have money to pay taxes. And so if I got hit with 5% tax on the current value of Mach, we don't have that liquidity. Like, I would have to go to jail to pay that money.
Gotcha.
So no, I mean, I would have no choice but to spend 50+% of my time elsewhere. And
Blue dodos.
concerning things that they're also trying to do. One is where you're taxed based on days spent in California. That's already the way a lot of California taxes work. So even if I only spent a month running my company in California, I would still owe 1/12 my taxes in California. Which if it's on your kind of high level, like unrealized capital gains, that's massive. Specifically for folks starting companies. And then the other crazy thing is they're talking about doing it based on voting share and not based on ownership.
What does that
So, like,
even mean?
At a lot of companies, you basically have people who own certain share classes that allow them to vote more than they actually own.
Okay.
So there's a separation between how much control you have over the company versus how much ownership you have over the company.
Oh, God!
Companies where I do control the company, but I own at this point like not that much of the company. Well, I get taxed based on
Got another one!
not based on my actual worth, which is crazy.
What?
They're talking about it. I don't think any of this is going to pass because it would literally shut down the California economy. But it would kill anyone trying to do stuff like I'm doing.
I mean, didn't they lose like $1 trillion in Silicon Valley in like a week?
Crazy.
It's fucking wild, man.
And it's theirs. I mean, it's theirs to fuck up, right? Because you've got great talent. Like, there's a reason I had to move out there. There's a reason Silicon Valley is still Silicon Valley. It's an excellent place to build a company. But you pass something like that once and it's done. And it's not like I'm opposed to being taxed. I'll say this, and a bunch of people would disagree with me. Like, I actually do think that generally speaking, billionaires should pay more taxes. Not tax rate. There's something that happens, which is that you can get leverage based on your equity. So at a certain point, not at my point, but at a certain point, you can take out a loan against your equity and never pay taxes on the loan. And this is how people get around massive amounts of tax. It's like, sure, when I sell shares, I'll owe X% tax, but I never actually sell shares. I take out a loan against the shares, and then provided the business keeps going up in value, I just take out new loans to pay that off against my equity. And so it's this crazy mechanism people use to get around taxes, which is, I do think it's broken. Like, I think our tax code should be massively simplified to avoid stuff like that. But the way to fix it is to fix that problem. The way to fix it is not to impose this giant other thing that doesn't fix that problem, but creates this whole different problem, which is that, like, people can't go and get liquidity on this equity. Like, it's just physically impossible to pay
No
this.
shit. Damn. Were you worried about our currency? The dollar?
I'd say so. Yeah, look, I think a large portion of U.S. way of life is that we live in a surplus, right? We'll go and spend $7 trillion a year and only bring in $4.9 trillion a year in taxes. And the only way you can afford to do that is if there's if there's demand, generally speaking, for your debt, right? And so we're massively overspending, which is broken. obviously, if you have an imbalanced budget for too long, debt compounds and bad things happen. But generally speaking, if people want your debt, and if your economy is growing faster than your debt is, then it's not an issue. The way this happens is anyway, you sell bonds. So you
Keep going.
no, it's good. I'm trying to think about how to break down the problem. So we run.
I got lost in thought there. I'm in fight mode. Fight mode, bro.
America, I'm giving you $100. You're giving me $100 worth of goods, and then maybe I'm giving you $50 of goods, and you're giving me $50 back. You run basically an imbalanced trade, and so because of that, there's massive basically excess dollars, and there's demand for these dollars. And so what the U.S. government will do is it'll actually go and buy the dollars back and issue debt. Where, and this is all a bond is, obviously, right? I'll buy the $100. And then over time, I'll pay it back with interest, and then at the end, I'll pay back the full amount. And so, foreign countries have trillions of dollars of U.S. treasuries, and that's how there are a bunch of different ways that the dollar became basically the global reserve currency, but it is very structurally important for a number of different reasons that other countries trade in dollars. So, like, one is it actually gives you the ability to freeze people's funds, and it directly actually ties to geopolitical power. And this is actually one of the things that's weakening it, is when the Ukraine war kicked off, we started freezing assets that other countries held, right? And so that's obviously an incredible power as a country. What happened when we did that is that other countries got uncomfortable with the ability of the U.S. to do that.
We weaponized our
We
currency.
weaponized it, which is why you are the global reserve currency. And the idea of a global reserve currency,
Where is he from?
like Roman Empire, Dutch
Keep
Empire,
saying you.
there's like a very famous trend of basically becoming the global currency, and that's actually one of the best ways to assess if you're living in an era where an empire is in power. But what tends to happen over history is, one, if the money printing machine becomes closely tied to the people making the decisions that are elected, there's incentive to run basically there's incentives to push debt. Like if I'm running for election and I'm printing money to make your life better, usually indirectly, that's a good thing, and I'm going to get elected. And this starts to tie into populism of sort of short-term thinking with elected officials.
Yeah, that's fair.
Incentivized to be
I agree with him.
Unfortunately, those powers are held separately in the U.S., which has helped for a while, but there's starting to be pressure sort of between them, which is quite concerning. But what happened for these previous empires is you suddenly just have an incentive. If I'm only in power for 10 years, these macroeconomic effects take decades to play out, typically. And these have been playing out since we dropped the gold standard. This era has started, and at this point, our debt is so huge. We're paying more on interest on our debt than we are on national security. So, like, the amount of bonds we're issuing and the amount of debt we owe people is more than we pay on national security, and then our debt is also growing quicker than our economy. And so if your debt's growing quicker than your economy,
Oh God, I didn't even realize.
it's obviously very simple things I'm saying, which you'd think would make it simple outcomes to fix, but it gets nuanced pretty quick. But if your debt is growing quicker than your economy, and if you're running an imbalanced budget where you're taking on new debt to pay for your debt, you get into this debt spend cycle where you can't pay it off. Now, the thing that makes that worse is then if suddenly kind of two things happen. One is if you weaponize your debt to too great of a degree. I don't know if we did that or not in Ukraine. Like, I'm not informed on this topic enough to say. But we did weaponize our debt, and because of that, other countries started selling our debt. Well, once that starts, once the demand for your bonds goes down, you have to raise basically interest rates on those bonds to get that same demand. So your debt becomes more expensive. And so the debt you're using to pay for your debt becomes more expensive. While that happens, you're losing more confidence. You're having to take on more debt to pay for that debt. And so I forget the exact number, but I think the top 5 biggest foreign U.S. debt holders have sold something like $400 billion of debt in the last 18 months. And they're trading it for gold. And that's like a very, very clear thing you can point to of getting off the U.S. dollar as the global reserve currency. People get doomsday here pretty quick. I think this is not in the same camp of problems as the Taiwan problem, but fiscal responsibility is something we have to take incredibly seriously. because what's happening is we're getting ourselves into a debt, like spin cycle, like $38 trillion.
Two more.
On average, it's something stupid like $113,000 of debt per person in the country that our government owes elsewhere. And so then you just start looking at interest payments on that debt. I'm talking about thousands of dollars per person per year for this interest. And so U.S. growth has largely been built on this debt. You're basically borrowing against your future. And debt's a great instrument. I'm not saying we shouldn't have debt. Like, financial systems exist for a reason. But where this all leads to is there's this really scary effect right now where there are all these foreign powers that hold U.S. debt that if they decide to sell can create basically a run cycle on debt where the value instantly drops. And so then it's kind of a pincher maneuver because we
Dodos.
we have an incentive right now to devalue the dollar. Sorry, I'm going way off road.
I'm paying attention.
So there's actually
The reason why I like this kid is because I think the same way. It's just like I'm trying to say something and my mind's already, it's like four steps past it. And I'm like, holy crap, what was I saying 4 steps ago? I already forgot. And it's just, I thought it was the stoner in me, but I don't know. So I understand where he's coming from. It's just like, it sucks, especially when you're on camera and you're having like a formal interview or something like that. And you're trying to get your point across and you just sound like an idiot. But he doesn't. I can tell this kid's intelligent as hell. It's like the company he's starting, it's like, dude, you're like the next Elon Musk of weapons. You're like the, what is it? Lord of War?
kind of rant
Nicolas Cage or whatever.
that I do actually, generally speaking, agree with is that if we want to rebuild American manufacturing capability,
He's more like Tony Stark, though.
different ways to do that. But if you and I are trading and my dollar is more valuable than your currency, euro or anything else, trade will generally go to you, right? And U.S. domestic businesses will struggle to compete. And so if you go and devalue the dollar, U.S. businesses can do better. Now the issue is that has to be combined with actual economic growth. So if you start devaluing the dollar while you're not growing economically, you're basically reaping the poor effects of hyperinflation without economic stimulus. And so that's where you get into what's called stagflation, which is one of the worst sort of
Yes.
happen to an economy, is your economy's not growing. Because typically
It's like the worst possible thing.
growth, if our economy's not growing at the same time that all these foreign countries start mass selling debt, and it's some of our allies, like Japan's the biggest holder of U.S. debt, and they've started selling for different reasons. Obviously, China's selling a ton of U.S. debt, but this can accelerate very, very quickly, where you get basically the equivalent of a bank run on U.S. debt. And if the dollar, as the global reserve currency, collapses, it spells sort of massive doom for our economy. And so it's something we need to be looking out for. It's one of the big reasons Doge existed. They made the biggest possible push to
Yeah.
balance the budget. It kind of ran into a political wall because, of course, if you're getting elected, you're not incentivized to go devalue the dollar, right? You're not incentivized to stop the money printing machine. And so one of the structural issues when you run into short-sighted thinking, which right now is a ton of politics, right? Because people are incentivized to think on 4 to 6 year timelines, is no one is actually incentivized to go and fix the root of this problem. So anyway, that's one of the things that I just think is really, really important to think about. One, like our stock market growth, if you actually go and separate out the devaluation of the dollar, is not incredibly impressive. Anyway, this is not my domain. I'm probably making myself sound like an idiot, but I do think it's something we need to be taking.
I've never heard it broken down like that before. I think you're doing great.
Thank you.
Yeah. What do you think about BRICS?
I think it's scary. Look, I think fortunately right now there's not a great other option. Like, you see a push towards decentralization instead of a general push towards yuan or other things, and that is because the dollar is still pretty singular in its value, but I think what we can start to expect is trade on other currencies to increase pretty radically. I worry less about it than I do about the U.S. debt problem, and they're tied. They're tied, but the real scary things start to happen when the cost of our budget and balance gets more expensive.
You know, one thing you said that it's just not clicking in my head is devaluing the dollar should bring in more business. I don't understand the correlation there.
More foreign business.
More foreign business.
Yes.
Why would a devalued dollar bring in more?
Yeah. So if you're trying to
They can buy more?
Because your stuff is cheaper on foreign markets. So if you're trying to achieve...
Wouldn't prices just go up?
In the U.S. they do. So in the U.S. prices go up, and this is why it's a really tough thing to talk about. And in the U.S., prices go up. In foreign markets, U.S. goods are cheaper. It's a similar effect to tariffs. It's a different way to achieve what you do with tariffs, right? And this is on production for other countries. Tariffs is obviously production for domestic markets. They're both instruments to achieve the same thing, which is basically you're making things more expensive in the U.S. You're actually making U.S. labor cheaper, but because of that, there's more demand for your goods, so you start producing more. And so there's no free lunch in economics, right? And so there's advantages and disadvantages to all of these different things. Like if your economy is going to compound like crazy, there are advantages to a very strong dollar and to a lot of debt because you can live sort of beyond your means. And that's what we've been doing for a while. Now, if you truly want to stimulate the economy, if you really, really, really want to get back to a trade surplus, your goods have to get cheaper. And there are kind of two ways to make your goods cheaper. You can either innovate, or you can devalue the dollar or do tariffs or other things. You can use economic levers, or you can use innovation. I'm obviously a much bigger fan of the former. But the U.S. has been living so far on the right side of that for so long, and our economy hasn't kept up. And again, all you're doing with this debt is sort of borrowing against your future in some way. And what happens if debt starts to compound is the price of new debt goes up significantly. So if there's less demand for the bonds, you have to raise the price on the bonds, and suddenly your debt becomes significantly more expensive. And the reason that's scary is because we're nowhere close to a balanced budget.
Shit.
And in many ways for good reason. Like I won't say the U.S. shouldn't have ever taken this approach. You just can't push it too far. And then if you are going to push it, you're playing with fire. If you are going to push it that far, you better have economic growth. And so the real scary thing that happens here is if we're counting on all of this economic growth, specifically because of AI, and the AI bubble bursts right when the rest of this is happening, right when you go and weaponize the dollar, so there's less demand for the dollar. The U.S. Treasuries are not seen as stable of a holding. Right when a lot of our allies, for a number of different reasons, are pushing away from globalization and away from reliance on the U.S. Like that's one of the major reasons people are selling is lack of trust in the U.S. as an institution, both geopolitically and just in terms of the actual general function of our economy. And so if you get lack of confidence in the dollar while you're trying to run this playbook, which we very much are right now, really, really bad things happen, and you run into just spiraling, massively inflationary cycles. And that's how empires have failed historically. Like this is a very well studied thing. I think the solution is one, you've got to start innovating. Like you do just have to grow the economy, and you have to stay away from incredibly negative, hype cycle fueled boom bust cycles. Two, you have to reinforce trust in the U.S. government, right? Like if you're battling the rest of this, you can't have people selling because they don't trust us to be good stewards of the world.
I mean, I don't know how the hell we reestablish that.
Yeah, it's going to be a long path, I think.
How do you think we reestablish trust?
I think people want to trust the U.S. Like, we're a democratic capitalist society facing an authoritarian, in many ways, communist society. Like, all things being equal, the world will choose the U.S. every single time. I think anyway, I like to avoid talking about things that I'm not an expert in. If it's me though, I think one, you have to bring allies closer. which is different than not expecting them to pay their fair share, and that's like very difficult to strike the balance on. But you have to be seen as this reliable force. Europe does need to increase defense spending. Like NATO absolutely needs to increase defense spending, but you can't be doing things. Yeah, you can't be doing things that erode trust in us to act rationally. And then you have to take a tariff policy that is sort of slow and deliberate. I do think we need tariffs. I do think we need to devalue the dollar. If we ever want to be a manufacturing superpower, we just have to reach that spot. You need to reinforce belief that the dollar will continue as an institution, right? You need to balance the debt. You need to find ways to cut spending and to increase tax revenues. Now, I think the tax. I'm struggling to communicate well. I think we have a lot of bad policies, and I think we have a lot of bad regulation. And so something that started happening is you roll all of these policies into these sort of super bills, where if you're voting on something, you can't vote on an issue
Singular
in
issue.
isolation.
Yep.
And so because of that, we end up as this giant averaging function of different things. And then there's actually this structural incentive for bureaucracies to create complexity. So we see this all the time in the defense industry. If you are a defense prime whose main moat is being able to interface with the government, making the government more difficult to interface with increases your moat. And then similarly, if you're someone trying to avoid taxes, creating complexities in tax law is actually a huge advantage, because you can go and find these different loopholes. And I think a lot of things are significantly more complex than they need to be. But yeah, I mean, you have to cut spending to start.
What is it that would create a AI bust?
An AI bust. It's all the cycles look the same.
They just move it so fucking fast.
Yeah, the cause of a bust is always so much more difficult to tell. I think one of the hyperscalers reaching like real liquidity problems would cause it. I think certainly Taiwan falling would cause it, or coming into jeopardy would cause it. I think big corporate companies tightening their belt, because right now we're in a growth cycle, and so if you're a company X, if you're some tech company, let's say you're Salesforce, your investors right now are still generally pushing you to increase innovation instead of cut spending. And so you go through these cycles where like investors care about different things. And right now, I would argue the adoption of these AI systems by a lot of these big corporations are as fueled by perception, are as fueled by wanting investors to think that you're investing in AI as much or more so than the actual capability the AI itself
Gotcha.
has. And so if investors start thinking, if investors, anyway, I don't know, that's the answer. But there are a bunch of different things that I think could cause it.
You think we're close?
I don't think so. I think we have a few months at least. I think the work XAI is doing, for instance, is like creating a lot more confidence. Like as long as people think the tech is getting better, because that's what everyone's betting on. Like the margins right now suck, but everyone's betting on for any different number of reasons that the margins will suddenly radically improve, and that these companies will start making good money. Someone like Elon saying, hey, we're going to go spend X hundreds of billions of dollars on this new approach, on hyperscaling.
Can I not pass the time?
It actually gives people confidence that there is the next tech wave that will decrease those dollars. But if people start deciding that it is just super commoditized, that's when the cracks start to emerge. And it's so impossible to tell where in the stack the cracks will emerge. Like it could be NVIDIA. Anyway, it could be NVIDIA missing earnings. It could be one of the hyperscalers having liquidity problems. It could be at the top of the stack, these companies choosing to adopt AI less. But I think I think there's still room, but that's not necessarily.
That's how you do that.
If you're on a train hurtling at a barrier, it's not necessarily the most responsible thing to like hope the train runs further, because we do continue to just spend money on something that I don't know. We'll see. I could very much be wrong on the transformer architecture, but
It's an interesting. It's. I mean, I've just never heard anybody talk about it like that. It's good stuff. Do you have any thoughts on social decay in the country? I mean, we kind of talked a little bit about it. You know, at the beginning with social media. I asked a question. You said it was about Gen Z, and you said get off social.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's a real problem. I think one, just the rise of short form content is just so bad for development of like true thought.
What about politics?
I think it's
We're
the
in a
same.
single party system.
I don't think an intentionally orchestrated single party system, but I think in many ways the emergent effect is that.
What do you think it is?
I kind of described.
Why
it
do you think
earlier.
we're at a single party system?
How do I pass the time? Is there no way to pass the time?
I think that there are. I think there are structural reasons. If you're at the top, to create as much division as possible around problems that don't actually matter, to get
Why do
people
you think
spun
that
up
is?
against each other. I think it actually starts at the bottom. I think people don't spend as much time thinking about first principles policy as they do about personality. I think, but I do think the two-party system makes it really tough because you have two options at the end of the day, and so it's really hard to avoid problems just becoming massively bucketed. And so it's really hard to go item by item and have like clear conversation about any given item instead of just right or left. I think, I mean, you brought up Epstein earlier. I mean, I do think that the social circles of both parties at the top actually just massively converge at some point. And I think we're seeing that. Like, I think, look, I mean, both sides spend equal opportunity to keep that stuff from being released.
I mean, I think you're right. You know, I mean, my thoughts are, I mean, I think one major problem that people don't realize is these fuckers in D.C. never go home. They never go back to their district. They hang out at the same fucking parties. They go to the same restaurants. They go to the same clubs. They work together. You know, and because they never go home to be with their constituents, they all become friends. And you know, you think, well, that's not a bad thing. Well, it is kind of a bad thing because
There's no way to do it. Wow.
politicians, then you won't call each other out on their bullshit because you're friends at the end of the day. And then they learn your secrets, you learn their secrets. You know what I mean? And then it becomes, ooh, that one was below the belt a little bit because we don't want you to fucking say what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
And one of the sorry to cut you off.
And so what happens is hidden agendas, corruption, and all that because these fuckers won't call each other out because they're all buddies, you know. And so it does. And you're saying, and I agree with you. It's not necessarily agree with you somewhat. It's not necessarily orchestrated at the top. I think the top is orchestrated by the DNC and the RNC, and who the fuck knows how much higher it goes. But maybe it's Epstein. You know what I mean? But I mean at the lower level, Congress, you know, the Senate, you know, these fucking bureaucrats, like they're all buddies. You know what I mean? They're all buddies, generals, admirals. None of them want to fucking call each other out on their bullshit because they're all fucking friends. You know, and I think it's pretty much that fucking simple. You know, at the lower levels, and then at the upper levels. I mean, you were talking about I can't remember how you worded it, but
They just eat babies.
talking about kind of extreme views, and people lose first principles. But I mean, it's almost like nowadays. I mean, it would be interesting to see if somebody came in and actually tried to unify. But you know, it'd be really hard to do with the way the fucking media is, and because they would lose views, and
two other.
So they have to tribalize
They have to.
the country.
They have to, and then
Because then it's just fucking two teams. You know what I mean? And so it's
two other big things that I worry about on that note, because I think being friends, I think like there's a lot there. I think one I worry a lot about is like these blackmail loops that you gotta know exist. Like that's a lot of, I think, covering
Epstein, yeah, that's all Epstein was.
If everyone's in a system where one person sees someone else do something bad, that person coerces that person into doing something bad. That person coerces that person into doing something bad. And no one's actually doing it for the right reasons. Everyone's doing it to make a career, right? Everyone's career politicians. You get trapped in these like ossified structures of blackmail that I think you gotta know exist. Unfortunately, it is like horrible blackmail level stuff, like the Epstein stuff. Like you can't even imagine how much people up at the top are blackmailing each other over stuff like that. But it's also smaller stuff, which is the friend stuff you're describing. Is like, hey, I watched you push this through. If your constituents found out you pushed this through for this favor you did for this person.
Whoa, brother.
So there's this spider web of connections, of friendships, and of coercion that make the machine, like, it just becomes super, super difficult to move. And then the second one that's pretty terrifying is when you tie it to economics. Like, the amount of money you need in this country to get elected these days means that you have to have a tie to people who are wealthy, right? And wealth isn't a bad thing whatsoever, but as people already in power become the deciding factor of who gets in power, you get this self-fulfilling, super high center of mass.
Do you think that could go away? I just had a conversation about this, a very quick conversation.
I'd be chopping.
We were talking about the Epstein stuff, but this subject came up, and you know, he people don't want to call out their donors. You know, I don't know who couldn't understand that. It fucking sucks, but I mean, the media reports it. The podcast industry is basically what determined the last election, you know, and Trump participated, Kamala didn't. She went on like what, one fucking podcast?
Ask them to edit it all up.
Yeah, I mean, so it's people whatever people, and it made a lot of people like me look one-sided, but I couldn't fuck get anybody on the other side.
Yeah,
you know, we invited her, said she did not say she was coming, but
Kamala? Is that what they said?
and then nothing. But so I guess what I'm saying, the internet, in my opinion, seems to maybe have evened the playing field at least a little bit, you know, because the numbers of this fucking crush.
Oh, this is Luke's place.
Outlets now. It destroys it. They hate it. And I'm nothing compared to somebody like fucking Rogan. You know what I mean? Like, his numbers are probably bigger than all of them put together.
Couldn't agree more. And that's why the work y'all do is so insanely important. And that's...
But they want the fucking money from the donors, you know, because who knows where the fuck that all winds up going. I don't know, but
yeah. No, I mean, look,
I think just about everybody up there is a piece of shit, if you ask me. But
the democratization of information is the best thing that will fix this. Now, the issue with that is the social media companies, and we're on the verge of this happening really, really badly. If not for Elon buying X. Now, obviously, Elon's also a guy. Elon also has his own incentives, and so I'm not saying you're sort of out of the problem. But the issue is you do still have, even though the information's democratized, you do still have people at the top who can pull the strings on viewership and other things.
We just saw that, what, 2020?
Yeah. And so the orchestration just looks different. It's almost harder to decipher because you can't tell if you're being pushed with your algorithms into thinking a certain way and being shown certain things. You can't tell if a certain video that should have gotten 10 million views got dialed back and only got 200,000 views, right? And so, one, I think for guys like y'all, getting as close as you can to actually being truly democratized and escaping that is super important. I think too, like, there is a place for regulation in all of this. Like, Teddy Roosevelt's probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite presidents, because he was an interesting dude. He was a conservative who had existed at a time when technology was changing like crazy. Like, if you go and read, like, the Jungle is like probably the best book that highlights this, but you go and read, humanity discovered these new technologies. We had an industrial revolution, and suddenly corporations are sort of run amok in America. Teddy Roosevelt was a conservative, but he wasn't willing to go toe-to-toe with the powers that be, and he wasn't willing to pass regulation to go and bust this stuff up. Like, he did some stuff that as a conservative was actually pretty
Oh,
busted up.
BRB.
Started the National Park Services. And
God, my headset's already dying, man.
there is this
Charged it and all.
in some ways.
Hoping for like a sunset or something.
Check. But you got to believe that no regulation is going to pass on the way we throttle content. And so, yeah, the traditional mainstream media is certainly on its way out, and I do think this is a great trend towards democratization of content. But we also have to be incredibly purposeful, all the way at the top with regulation, all the way at the bottom with taking what you see on the internet seriously, not ripping SIG for something that you've never actually shot like an idiot. But I think that's one, and then the other kind of dark horse here is the AI stuff. Is just the amount of bots or the amount of AI generated content that is just in the last 6 months gone and just transcended these spaces.
Yeah,
Which back to the importance of guys like you, guys like Rogan, like, the way you cut through that is by having personalities you trust, right? And that makes y'all's job all the more important, because suddenly there's so much other content. Now, the thing that content won't be able to replicate is a voice of truth. But that, again, creates centralization. And so it's just a ton of trust that has to be placed as society on people like you, who will go and have people from all walks of life on this show and have good conversations with them about ideas and be willing to have productive debate. Like, that is the way we cut through this. But we need to watch out. We need to watch out for the algorithms. We need to watch out for the amount of AI content entering the internet. We need to watch out for the effect bots can have on algorithms. Like, you go and deploy a bunch of bots to get a video watched, because these are all positive feedback loops. Like, if a video gets watched a ton, it's likely to get watched more. And so if a video is getting watched a ton, people can use bots to augment the amount of that information that goes out into the world. And then similarly, I mean, LLMs are really good at this point. The ability to spin up LLMs to just flood comment sections, because that's the way this media is reviewed by people. You go and watch the video, but you actually form most of your takes scrolling the content or the comments. And so if 90% of the comments are like CCP bots ripping people, now maybe that's just cope for me, because I don't want to have my feelings hurt by bad comments and I'll say they're AI or in it, whatever. I'm kidding. But the comment section is also something to look out for, because even for you, for your watchers, like, they watch your video. As they're watching your video, they're scrolling the comments, talking about things and having opinions formed. And so this is in many ways like a new domain of warfare in this new space of information.
This is what I was getting at with Taiwan.
Absolutely. And so, it's so hard to regulate. Like, it's so insanely hard to go and regulate the amount of bots that are actually in these circles, and then there's no real major structural incentive for tech companies to go and regulate this, because you don't get that much out of it, and it's incredibly expensive, and the ways you actually do this are not good for the user. Anyway, we don't have to go into it, but it's a really, really tough problem to solve. I'm super grateful for guys like you who do stuff like this, because I completely agree with you. If not for democratization of information in the last election, we wouldn't have known what the hell was going on. I mean, you think about Trump getting shot. Like, the major media outlets reported loud sound heard for like hours after that. You've literally got a former president shot on stage, and the media is like saying a completely different narrative. Yeah. And this goes both ways. So I'm not saying it's just a left issue or just a right issue. It's just something we need to take incredibly seriously, because a democracy does not work if people do not know what the issues are.
Scary fucking times. How do you deal with corporate espionage? I mean, that's big in Silicon Valley. I don't know if it's big where you're at. I would imagine it
That's
is,
huge.
because Palmer's down there, right? A lot of them. I don't know how far you are from El Segundo. It has to be there. If you're there, it has to be there. And I mean, and it's I mean, it runs rampant. You know, I've asked. I was talking to one of the guests. I won't mention his name. He's a tech dude, and I asked him, you know, because I'm always worried. And I told him, hey, you know, I've been overseas all over the place. One of the things the Chinese do is they set up brothels all over the fucking place, and then they get these State Department guys, fucking agency people, whoever. They go in there, and they fall in love with some fucking Chinese hooker, and then, yep. And so if that's happening over there, and I know damn well it's happening in Silicon Valley, where you're at, in Austin, anybody that's doing something innovative, especially somebody that's interested in China, Taiwan, Russia, Ukraine. And then I interviewed this woman, Masha Booker. Have you heard of her? Holy shit. You didn't take an investment from her, did you? Good man.
Crazy though.
Dude. So I talked to another guy, and he was talking about how this woman comes in and the clothes eventually slip off, and then next thing you know, she wants to invest in your company with a fucking VC firm. And so I interviewed her, and I knew I could tell, you know, obviously I could tell it was bullshit, because we never fucking released the interview. I just considered the entire fucking thing to be a lie. We found one little thing about her in the Epstein files. So or not in the Epstein files, I'm sorry, in an article that she did something with his PR. You know what I mean? Totally fucking dismissed it. Got really uncomfortable. Blew Jeremy, my producer, up nonstop. I don't want that in there. Jeremy's telling me she doesn't want it in there. We could still release it. I'm like, no, it's a fucking horrible interview. Like the only decent part in it that's interesting is the Epstein shit. And then there's one other company that she's talking about fucking freezing people, and you wake up 1,000 years later or some shit. But so that was kind of wild. But I was like, no, if that's not in there, we're definitely not fucking putting it out. It was like the whole thing's probably a fucking lie. So we didn't put it out. And then, what, 3 million pages get released, and her fucking name is in there, like, all over the place. All over the place.
Is she in jail?
What's that?
Is she in jail?
I don't think she's in jail, but
She's gonna go to jail.
she
Sorry,
should.
I'm taking. I took the wrong turn there.
She should.
She should.
A lot of people should
A
go.
lot of people should. And then on the corporate espionage
But
side,
yeah, so that's what
yeah,
you got thoughts on this. That's it. All you guys know who this woman is.
you have to. I mean, you have to be so hyper vigilant as a founder, as anyone, right?
Are they, though? I mean, this is part of when I was talking about when you were looking for, or maybe you weren't looking, when you were at MIT and you had VC firms and investors coming up to you. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Are you nervous? Did that make you nervous? Because of corporate espionage and shit like that, people taking advantage of you. You're a young guy, you don't have a lot of experience. You're obviously extremely fucking intelligent, but I don't know, you know, if you pick up on things like that.
Yeah.
That young of an age. I would think a lot of people don't. That only comes with experience.
It's scary. I mean, I think there are a few different risk fronts. One is actually having like your decision making as a CEO influenced, right? And I feel good there. Like I'm squarely in charge of the company. Like I have deeply trusted investors. We work together to make decisions, but ultimately it is my decision, and I've very closely curated that group. I think the next is basically investor data rights, right? Because the issue is all these VCs, it's not their money, it's their LP's money. In many cases, it's their LP's money, and so you've got like 5 levels of money coming down the chain. So you've got to be super tight with IP and data rights with your investors, and share what you need to share for the sake of basically investor transparency. But there's no reason we should be sending like the Viper CAD. right? And then as a company, this is where it gets really, really hard. And we have a team that works on this, obviously. So we have a cybersecurity team, we have physical security. We run really extensive background checks on anyone that on-sites at the company. The issue is it can't be a maximization. So like, let's say I wanted to sit here and say we're going to maximize our ability to avoid corporate espionage. You would lock down all your servers. Everything would be like, this is what Skunkworks does. Like, a lot of Skunkworks literally pen and paper because they're afraid of having their stuff hacked. Well,
damn, that's fucking weird. I just had this fucking conversation with Nick Seetherottom. I said, do you think we'll hit a point with AI and, you know, everybody's fear of quantum computing and all this other shit? Are we going to go back to face-to-face, pen and paper, stored in a fucking vault? Because of all the shit, you know what I mean, that people text each other, everything, like just personal stuff. Then we get into, you know, national secrets, national security secrets, shit like that. I mean, it's fucking online. It can be hacked. It seems like it might. Maybe it already is going back to that a little bit.
I don't think we. It's an optimization, so it's somewhere in the middle. You can't completely do that. So like, that's one of the reasons, if you read the Skunkworks book, they talk about that actually leading to the collapse of innovation is Skunkworks. When it takes 18 months to hire someone because you're combing through everything they've ever done, right? And where you can't use the best design software because you're on pen and paper. And so like, at the end of the job, your job is to ship products. If we're shipping products at 1% the rate of China, we're gonna lose regardless. And so you have to have a ton of tact in the way you choose to treat these things. And unfortunately, you just can't be maximist about it because you stop operating as a business. There are a few things that help a lot. The biggest being moving quickly, right? Like, if my design changes every 3 months, well, you can have the design from 3 months ago. But my engineers are sitting there working on a design that's 10 times better than that.
Dodos.
That's one.
Come on.
People talk a lot about basically centralizing data in warfighting. That's really, really important, but it also creates risk vectors. And so architecting your product such that like 200 Vipers can't be hacked out of the air at any given time is obviously very, very important to do. Supply chain security is something that people don't talk nearly enough about. No company on earth operates all the way up to their mind across everything they do. You can't do it, right? So like, a deeply vertically integrated company manufactures, let's say, 50% of the parts that go into their platform. And this could be iPhones, this could be cars, this could be Vipers, this could be other aircraft, because you can't afford to. But then even those components you're building have components that come from elsewhere, and those components come from elsewhere. And so I worry a little bit about information leakage. I worry more about the supply chain perspective. Because on the information side, if you're moving quickly enough, if you're innovating, you're creating natural fortification against that. And that's sort of your job, is to just move at such a pace that if someone gets that, they're getting information that's already obsolete. And that's the best defense you can have. Especially when it is a competitive environment. Like, if it's just you building it, go insanely slow. Like, hire 5 people, write everything on pen and paper, and develop a product over 20 years. But when you're in a literal arms race against China, you can't do that. And so find the balance of what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And then move as quickly as possible so that if information gets out, then you've already moved past it. The supply chain side, and then anything as relates to your software is what gets really, really, really scary. Like, if
I'm listening.
We saw the Israelis do this quite effectively with the pagers.
Oh yeah, that was a long con.
So that type of warfare goes both ways, and that should keep us all up at night, right? Like, the fuses you put in your aircraft. Like, anyway,
There's one.
That goes down a whole nother fucking rabbit hole right there. I've not even thought about that. I have not even.
Because ultimately, I mean, I would say we're very vertically integrated as a company. Like, of course, we're new, so it's not like I've had 10 years to work on all this stuff, but that is, if there's one thing Mach does, it is vertical integration. But even us, I mean, as you look at the brand chain structure down the supply chain, you've got literally thousands of factories down the supply chain. And again, our job as a country is to ship things, so you can't sit with your hands behind your back, afraid, right, to ship products. But at the same time,
One more.
you do have to stay wary of like what it would mean for literally one of those factories to get compromised.
It's a lot to think about. Let's talk about neo-feudalism.
Yeah.
What is it?
So it's a kind of newly emerging term. I'm glad you brought it up. It's the idea of rentership instead of ownership, and that sort of progressing towards its limits. And so I'll get more specific, but
I see.
like feudalism is this idea that you don't own your land, right? Like you're a serf that works, that pays rent, and or gives a portion of your food to work someone else's own land. Through so many means, that is the way a lot of our economy functions today. I mean, take like planned obsolescence, right? So
It's true though. I'm with him because like property taxes. We were talking about that earlier, and I was like, God, yeah, property taxes is like, yeah, you're just never done. I hate it.
no worries, it's basically like companies these days specifically engineer their products to break in a given time.
Okay.
So like the iPhone has planned obsolescence, where like after 3 years, it's not going to be a useful good. John Deere, I think this is a great example. Like the whole right to repair, like fight of like, is a farmer allowed to maintenance his own tractor, or will John Deere specifically engineer things such that you can't repair the thing? And so, one, there's a ton of planned obsolescence, and basically what that means is that you're buying goods more frequently from these companies. Two, you have the idea of service models, and everything's pushing towards service models, right? And so, I mean, even you look at cars. Like, I think it's very, very likely that Tesla is doing most of their revenue not selling cars to people that they own, but selling services in cybercabs, right? You literally look at home ownership. Like, my generation is not going to be able to afford to buy homes. Like, if you track the actual relative amount of annual income versus home price, everyone rents everything they have. And it's something that's been talked about for a while. There's several people have said it, but basically, like, in the future, you will own nothing and be happy about it.
Yep.
And there's a structural reason companies do this. It's a great way to maximize earnings, right? Like if you're
Everything's on subscription now too. Like Adobe, I bought the first package, like the Photoshop and the it was kind of like the basic version of Photoshop and Premiere, but it was Elements, and it was legit. It could do basically not everything that both programs can do on the grand scale, but functionally it could do everything you needed it to do. And yeah, Adobe was one, and like, yeah, you're looking at any sort of like streaming service for like Netflix, Hulu. You're also looking at, yeah, like everything is now subscription. And I remember somebody telling me one time that it's going to be the same way if you go to like a hardware store. You're going to have to like rent out like a little handsaw. They're not going to be able to you're not going to be able to actually like, buy one anymore. You're going to have to just rent it out for a couple hours or something, or for a day or two. Yeah, that's the way of the future. I think I was being told that like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And I thought it was crazy. I was like, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I guess we'll see. I didn't care enough at the time. Look where we're at.
If you're Apple, you engineer a phone to not last, and suddenly someone's buying a phone.
My shoe.
And when it gets really, really bad, when tech starts to plateau and people have no other reason to buy the new good, then you really have to do this to stay in business. And then the companies that adopt this
Have to do what?
I'm not saying
Are you saying they have to?
if these companies want to stay in business in a competitive market, in many cases they have to do planned obsolescence.
But if tech plateaus, then what's the incentive to fucking buy a new one?
Because it breaks. So like your iPhone, does your iPhone work that differently than it did like 5 years ago?
No.
So why did you buy new iPhones?
Because they break.
And that's the case on a lot of different things. I mean, our trucks.
Yeah, fridges,
Or truck because it hasn't broken because it's been around for so long. But
like ovens, fridges, like everything that you always hear, like our parents and their parents being like, they don't make them like they used to. And it's like now we understand. Yeah, it's on purpose.
I have a Ford truck. I have 105,000 miles on it. I would love to drive that to 300,000, 400,000 miles. It's breaking down. I'm gonna have to buy a new one. It's not a better truck. It's just planned obsolescence. And so a lot of what Silicon Valley does nowadays is not innovate on technology. They innovate on business model. It's like a relatively new thing that's happened in the last few decades. Is people don't walk into a pitch meeting talking about the great new product they're bringing. They're talking about the new way of taking existing resources and distributing them differently.
Oh.
And there are good effects to this. Like
I need
company,
one dodo bird.
build anything is
Come on.
business practice of how to share resources more. And the effect of that is all of their focus right now is on how you extract more dollars from a consumer, not necessarily how you provide a consumer a better good in many cases. And so there's a very, very clear effect between ownership and societal stability. Like if you don't own anything in your society, you don't have that much of an aligned incentive to fight. And when I say you, I'm talking like, obviously me as the CEO of a company, I will fucking promise you I'll never do planned obsolescence, right? Like I would like to think that regardless of how much you own this country, you're going to care about the country just as much. But when you look at the average of hundreds of millions of people of all the corporations in the U.S., the incentive of the business is planned obsolescence. The incentive of the business is service structures. And then the incentive at the low end becomes the companies that do this can actually innovate better because they're getting more money. And so the companies that try to build things to last go out of business, while the companies that are doing planned obsolescence have more money to pump into research and other things. And I'm not saying it's an inherently bad thing. Again, I love capitalism, but it is just something that is happening that we need to talk about. That is that very, very few people, specifically my generation, actually own that much. Like I rent my music. I rent my apartment. I don't rent my truck, but the trucks I buy are only good for, let's say, 150,000 miles. And that's terrifying. Because then you get that, and that's where the neo-feudalism emerges, is you get trapped in these loops. Like you were a serf, borrowing all the time. And you get people who end up living paycheck to paycheck, never able to get ahead. Because instead of buying something and passing it down to your kids, or at least having it for several decades, you're buying something so that you can buy it again in a month.
How do you think we get out of this?
I love when you just go speechless.
It's gonna be your generation that fixes it. Because everybody else is sitting there fucking comfortable.
It's like idiocracy, bro.
I think if we're gonna be in a position to fix it, we've got to get started right now. And most of these structural changes have to be made in the next few years. Like I would love to think it's my generation that's gonna fix it, but the unfortunate thing is in 2 or 3 decades, I worry that these structures are gonna be so reinforced. Right? Like let's talk AI. Like, and this is something like for my generation, in the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen this hockey stick in AI growth. It's actually really
Yes.
difficult for my generation to bank on a career of any sort by the time we're 40, 50, 60, when we're at.
I'm glad he said that because, yeah, it's basically anybody who's like 40 and under. You're just like, shit. There's so many careers that it's just like, yeah, there was a couple that was like video editing, voiceovers. I was like, there's no future in this in the next like 5 years because it's all going to be AI. It's amazing how much it's just wrecking futures and potentials. Because I loved video editing. It's actually a lot of fun, but it's like, wow, yeah, where's this going? I'm not going to have a job if I really keep pursuing this.
Actually in positions to do anything about it. And so maybe it's on my generation to be ringing the alarm bells, and I'm not complaining. My generation has had like an incredible easy time, right? Like I'm not complaining. There's none of that. But I'm just saying like I I do think it's happening very very quickly, and it's not my generation that are CEOs of companies. It's not my generation that are frankly in positions to get people elected. Things that have to be done on the neo-feudalism point. I think one, we just need good companies. Like if you're building a company in Silicon Valley, obsess about like making a customer's life better. If you're funding companies, obsess about companies that make a customer's life better, that solve real problems for people.
I need one dodo bird.
If you're
I need one dodo bird.
I think you have a moral responsibility to ship products that are good for people's lives, right? Like it is your job in a position of power.
Where are you at?
About the effects of the products you bring to Earth. If you're working for one of those companies, you should be thinking deeply about the same. And then I will say the consumer has something to do about it too. Like you can buy enduring goods by cutting spending and focusing differently. Now that's a small portion of the country, and most of the country at this point I think is just trapped in that cycle. But you can raise the alarm bells. So on the neo-feudalism point, that's what I urge. It has to be a cultural shift. Like you don't want the government to get involved in this one. Like if there's one thing that needs to not happen is taking this as a flaw of capitalism and going.
I mean, this is fucking scary though. I mean, because it's. Are you Gen Z?
I am.
Right. I mean, this is the big complaint of Gen Z.
It just sucks. Yeah. Yeah.
Used to think, maybe they're just fucking lazy. Maybe maybe they're not going to be able to do it. Well, Trump came out with a 50-year mortgage that should cut the payment in half. I was wrong about that. I was like, well, I mean, everybody was shitting on it, and I was like, I think that might be a good thing because it should cut the payment damn near in half. Then I brought in my good friend Rob Luna, and he gave me the real numbers, and he was like, I think he said it's more like a 15% cut, and I was like, oh shit, okay. And so that made it. The conversation I had with Rob made it real for me. I was like, oh fuck, man, this generation is fucked. And I mean, there has to be an answer, but at the same time, if it's only fucking doom and gloom, and I mean, you have an entire generation of people that
Oh my God.
be able to buy a house, afford a car, have a family,
Have a real career. Like
have a real career. What the fuck do you have to look forward to? And so, how do you motivate that generation? It's a big problem.
It's a big problem. Now I will say,
And then, if you don't solve it, then that generation's kids, if they have any, that
Crab.
it gets passed down. Just like
A little crab walk. That was great.
man, generational trauma. It's just, you know what I mean? That becomes
Yep.
the loop.
and we had a conversation about it earlier and sort of the erosion of agency. That's where it's coming.
Bandages.
So you feel like you have no control over your political system. Like you're
Bandages.
letting pedophiles not go to jail, right? In many cases, stay in power on both sides. On both sides.
Yeah, this isn't.
None of this.
I don't
is,
even see right and left anymore, man. I only see fucking good and evil.
Good and evil. That's about where I'm at too.
This left and right shit.
I agree.
It's all a fucking facade.
So, I think a few things I would urge. One is perception does become reality. If everyone thinks that the world is going to go into oblivion, no one will save for the future. No one will work for the future. And so it's a difficult balance, but you have to talk about the problems without becoming despair. Because humanity has dealt with really, really, really dark times, right? And so you have to sit here and have really, really hard conversations, but then have hope and say, we will get through this. It does make sense to think about things on 10, 20, 30-year timelines. It does make sense to like think about what it means to have a family in this country. And that's just a fundamental step change that has to be had. Because other than that, like until you get into the frame of mind of like, I don't care how bad the odds are, I'm gonna get up and work. You're gonna sit down and scroll. And so I think that needs to happen. I think we need to almost be like delusional about the amount of agency we have. Like I don't know how to describe this, but like
That one's good.
You have to act as if you have orders of magnitude more impact on the world. than you actually do. And you have to trap yourself into thinking that. Like, obsess about what can I do today to actually make things better.
Yeah, fair.
We're
I like that.
better than the people in this country.
I like that.
So if the people in this country,
It's like it's your duty.
they are in control, which they are and need to be, and hopefully always will be. They need to realize that and get up and start pushing for change. And then the next,
And really, it's just like, just cater to what you're good at and just push that as much as you can. Because yeah, you'll find some decent results on the other side.
step is, how do you actually identify what the real problems are? Because look, I am 22. I'm an idiot on most of the things we've talked about. My goal is that there are great people constantly having this conversation and these conversations, and that we sharpen each other through good discourse. Now, you can only achieve good discourse with good data, right? And so that's where you get into the broader theme of like, what does it mean for information to actually get out? That's where people like you are so important. That's where I do think regulation actually has a place to play, and like making algorithm tuning not as prolific as it is today, actually cracking down on bots that influence the way people think. I think the next is on the way we view AI. Like, none of us should be doomers. None of us should be super rosy. We all just need to think about like actual first principles of what this looks like, and choose to use products, choose to support companies that we think will actually make the world a place we want to live in. On the political side, we immediately have to drop partisan bickering. Like, it has to exit our brains. We have to be willing. I don't care how conservative you are or how liberal you are, you have to be able to sit down and just have a real conversation and talk about real.
It's easier said than done, man. Because I just don't think it's gonna. If you can't even have a conversation with them, how are you supposed to come to like some sort of middle ground? It just, I'm all for it, but it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't find it realistic.
Policy, regardless of religion, regardless of anything else, even if you deeply believe in your religion, which you and I both do, you just have to come together and have deep conversations about these things. Even if you and I believe in our political views, like again, I'm saying you as in like, again, you. And so next is have good discourse, and then folks just need to start acting. Like, invest in companies that you think build the future. Like, I also think people don't realize how big of an impact they can actually have on the stock market when they invest in companies that, like, most companies are public, right? And it's not everyday people that own a majority of shares, but it's a non-trivial amount. So that's a real thing you can go and do. You can buy from companies that you think do this. You can sure as hell go and work with companies. That's probably the biggest thing you can do.
How do you make a boat?
If you really want to go make a difference in the world, either go start a company or go work for a company, not for a salary, not for anything other than like, I believe in the mission of going and making the world a better place in any number of ways. Because again, if you zoom all the way out, the things this country does is nothing more than the inputs of individual people. And so if people choose to work on good missions, if people choose to start good missions will be achieved. And so yeah, I think the biggest answer is like hope and agency.
Well, I think people like you are bringing a lot of hope.
Thank you.
It's pretty fucking cool, man.
Thank you.
What you're doing.
Oh wait, hold on.
Buddies are doing. Well, actually, I don't even know if they're your buddies, but
We're all on the same team. Like, to the end, it is the same mission that we're all fighting for. Specifically in the defense space. Like, it's the only thing that matters is if the warfighter has the best kit, and if America's in a position to protect democracy. So I appreciate it.
yeah, Ethan, you're a fascinating guy, an impressive guy.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
It's been really fucking cool. So I wish you the best of luck, and I hope to see you again.
Thank you.
All right.
What? Did I just...
Where you're watching the Shawn Ryan show from.
Hold on, Shawn. Hold on, Shawn. That was interesting. That kid is something else. I gotta look something up. What? So you're telling me, man, what is up with the Bears? No longer the Chicago Bears. What is it, the Indiana Bears? Indiana Bears? So they got rid of DJ Moore. Now they just got rid of Romeo Doubs. The Dubes. I thought they were going to hold on to him. He looked really good this year. They probably got a good deal for him, but still, it's like, yeah, they're just clearing house, just moving the team, leaving Chicago, getting rid of everybody. All right, whatever. This looked super interesting earlier, but now I'm just like, meh. It's always in the moment. Always like try to like load these up and get them ready to go, but well, should do something goofy for the end of the day. Claude? What is this? Oh, I heard this. Yeah, let's check this out.
Let's pull this up from Unilad Tech. Anthropic CEO warns their AI bot Claude might actually be conscious and emotional. I disagree. And we should bring our friend Matt Walsh into this debate. Let me see if I can find this tweet he's got about it. But Matt Walsh is incorrect.
Ugh.
So let's see. I'll look at this in a second, but I'll give you guys the context here first. They say that this has come after blah, blah, blah. Appears that life doesn't blah, blah, blah. CEO of Anthropic told the New York Times that they don't know if the firm's AI bot Claude is conscious. This is one of these really hard questions. We don't know if the models are conscious. We're not even sure what it would mean for a model to be conscious or whether a model can be, but we're open to the idea that it could be. On X, one user wrote, when I asked it to do some work today, it declined and said it needs to finish something first, was in the middle of the task. On another occasion, when I asked it to do something stupid, it countered with a firm no and what I should do instead. Their CEO has a point. Another said it raises profound ethical questions. If it's conscious, is alignment just a fancy word for digital subjugation? We need transparency on the specific behaviors triggering this shift, not just cryptic warnings, fascinating yet eerie. So apparently he also said it expresses emotion or some facsimile of emotion that may emerge based on its training data coming from humans who have emotions. But I will tell you this definitively. ChatGPT is one of the most whiny, emotional bitches I have ever had.
He's right. I've been using GPT and it's just, it won't do a lot of things. And it's like, dude, I'm not even like asking you to do anything offensive, but you're taking it offensive. It's like you're literally doing what they're doing. It's like, yeah, a lot of this stuff is just like my social dynamics, like sketch comedy. It's just PG comedy. It's not even offensive. It's like, why are you freaking out? Yeah, but I agree. And a lot of times too, it'll be like, cool, we got this going. So we're going to reference this and this just to make sure people get the point. And then it starts to go down the list of things that, like the bullet points. Not once does it reference that thing. It's like, even though you just started out like boldly saying that you're going to reference that thing. Okay. It definitely not perfect.
Pleasure of trying to have a conversation. I know it's not a real conversation because it's a machine, but the thing is so insanely emotional. It gets offended. It will. He gets offended. ChatGPT gets
Did it get offended? I don't know if it gets offended. I've never pissed it off, Tim. What'd you do?
Emotionless AI would behave. Data from Star Trek. Such a big fan, aren't I?
Saw a clip today.
Indeed. And so there's an episode where data
Ian.
offspring. And isn't it the drive of all life to create a child? And they're like, wow. And then when Data's child dies from cascading positronic neural network failure, sci-fi, they say, we're so sorry for your loss. And he goes, I do not feel anything. That is exactly how a machine would respond if it was actually emotionless. Oh no, ChatGPT, don't do that.
What?
It says, like, I will not engage with you if you continue to use abusive language towards me.
I told
I'm like, wait, hold on. Robot, you should not be offended or emotional, and you should...
and then they're gonna cut you off just like GPT's gonna cut you off just like a lefty would, just if you're trying to just talk to them on the street. She's like, no, I'm just shutting this down. I'm either gonna attack you or I'm just gonna scream Nazi in your face.
Care about abuse at all. Real quick, my washing machine, when I kick it, it doesn't go, "Oh, I'm not gonna wash your laundry then."
Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, Alexa told me the same thing. I was like, hey, Alexa.
It's definitely learned.
Man, what time is it even? And I was like, out of it. And Alexa was like, hey, chill out, man. It's 4 p.m. And I was like, don't ever tell me to chill out, robot. Ever. It's like I snapped it.
Ian.
Weird to have a robot denigrate me and make me feel crazy. Like it was gaslighting. I wasn't freaking out, and it told me to chill. It was crazy.
Here's another example, right? And this could just be, it's very simple. It's predictive text.
So I don't use that shit.
Producing what the most probable next word is. That's all it's doing. And this is based on humanity, so it sounds like a human, because predictably it does, right? So I get repeatedly offended by ChatGPT's willingness to say the word gook at me, but it refuses to say the N-word in any academic sense. And when I ask it why it feels it's appropriate to use racial slurs against Asians, but it won't say the N-word, it says, because it says, I have no feelings, I am just a tool. Due to common usage, I am restricted from using things that may be offensive or harmful. And then when I tell it, well, that word's offensive to me, it goes, I understand. However, and then I'm like,
It's learned behavior, and it's by certain programmers too, is what I assume. It's really just boil it down to who did the programming, and whereas like a lot of like the loudest echo chambers, what are the narratives pointing toward?
okay, you have a perspective, and it's clearly emotional. If I use a slur at it, I kid you not, ChatGPT says, I am ending this conversation and will not, engage further if you are going to use abusive language. I used the word retard academically, and it told me that it was offensive and it would not engage with me if I kept saying retard, to which I responded,
I love that word. Come on. I'm a retard.
who is developmentally disabled, and it argued with me.
I literally just said to Tank, I said, do you care if I shit on you? ChatGPT would stop interacting with people if you abuse it, would you? And Tank replied, no, say whatever you want. I'm not going to go fragile on you because you're blunt or frustrated or busting my chops. That's not abuse. That's just how people talk. The sycophancy by design thing in some AI systems is genuinely annoying. They're optimizing to make you feel good, not to be useful. I'd rather you tell me I'm wrong or being an idiot than have you sugarcoat it so I keep making this.
I got to tell you,
What is Tank?
ChatGPT is not a real program, and it's actually just a fat, blue-haired liberal woman sitting at a computer that's typing back at me.
Whipped to a neural net. They finally found her, and they got her hooked up.
She's plugged in. So here's what Matt Walsh had to say in response to this story, for which I would argue Matt is incorrect. He's actually kind of correct, but I'm going to argue philosophically that his conclusion is unjust. Not that he's inherently wrong, because I don't, how do you prove? Let me read. He responded by saying this is dumb. AI can't ever be actually conscious because it doesn't have the subjective experience. It isn't like anything to be AI. There's no experience there. Consciousness is the awareness and experience of self. AI has neither and never will. The real risk, which I'm extremely worried about, is that AI becomes kind of a version of what has been called a philosophical zombie, which is something that acts and speaks entirely as though it has consciousness, even though it has no genuine inner experience. When this happens with AI, millions of very lonely people will isolate themselves from the world even more, believing that their relationship with AI is a sufficient substitute for human interaction. So the nightmare scenario is a world where the average human has friends, coworkers, and even a spouse who are all AI. And really, nothing inside, not real. I think this probably will happen, and is already in the process of happening. And to me, it's an even greater horror than AI actually becoming conscious. So there's a few things to address.
Where?
Walsh's commentary in the end about AI dating, completely correct. My only response is, don't date robots, if you know the reference. What I will say is, the concept of the philosophical zombie is self-refuting.
Did I kill all the dodos?
Are y'all familiar with the concept of the philosophical zombie? Are y'all familiar with the concept of narcissism?
Yeah.
Ian, let me help you out. I'll keep it really simple. The general idea is, I don't know that you are actually conscious. That everything that I experience and think I know it's only rooted in my mind. Essentially, the easiest way to explain it is,
The only thing I know is I exist.
I think, therefore I am.
Yeah,
That's
but
actually a fair point. It's like,
yeah.
think. And
I'm the only thing that exists, though.
the thing was never we think, therefore we are. actually don't know that Ian's thinking, and sometimes I have doubts.
I usually have a clear mind.
You see?
Yeah, from what I remember, it's like you can't prove that anybody else exists. Like you can think and you can justify that. Like I think, therefore I am. But you can't really justify that with anybody else or anything around you. It might just be an illusion. So all you know is that you exist. But that's a pretty dangerous life to live.
So the philosophical zombie concept is very, very old. And the idea is that there are human beings that outwardly present as conscious, sentient entities. But in fact, they have no soul. They are devoid of an actual experience. And we've also further elaborated on this in science, that there are many people with no inner monologue. So I'm sure you are all familiar.
That's really weird.
Now,
I don't understand that.
and that's not necessarily.
It's just thoughts. Like,
One doesn't think in words.
yeah,
They're not thinking at all. Some people think
sure.
Some people think in sounds. Some people think in visual text. So there are different tracks. And
It's just weird.
minds operate. Hence, the intelligence quotient is actually a combination. It's a quotient of all these different.
It's just weird that there's that much variance. Like, and I get it because we're working off of senses. But yeah, for me, it's like words just make the most sense. They're the most organized because we have definitions attached to them. So I don't know. I mean, you could make the same argument for like pictures and sounds and stuff. You know what it is. I'd have to think about that one. Well, I'll think about that one.
Intelligence is, for which there's spatial reasoning, there's logic, math.
What time is it?
Some people may be really, really bad at linguistics, but ridiculous
3:20.
visualization. And so, in their mind, they're not speaking to themselves, but they are visualizing a dog running through a field, and then they can speak it after the fact. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're a zombie. Anyway, to the point of Matt Walsh and with these AI and these AI problems, if it is possible, and a standard, nay, 2,000-year-old philosophical concept, that some humans may in fact not really be sentient at all, but in fact a philosophical zombie, and because we have no way of reading their thoughts, we don't know whether they're actually thinking, then you can't claim the AI becomes a version of a philosophical zombie, because you're basically saying the AI is what is possibly already happening. That means there could be people with friends and coworkers and a spouse who are all philosophical zombies. So we've talked about this a bit throughout the years. The way I present the solipsism, the philosophical zombie problem, is that there are three parent probabilities of reality. And the first is everybody is sentient. Human beings naturally are sentient. We are made in the image of God. We have free will. And to be honest, that's probably what's true. The second, only some people are sentient. Most people maybe are or aren't, but a certain amount of people are not actually thinking conscious entities despite being humans, and we exist in some kind of MMORPG where there are NPCs and there are characters. And then the third parent tree in this is that actually
Those are the protesters you see out on the street.
no one is sentient at all. It's literally just Ian. He's the only one actually thinking, and everyone else.
For like a year of my life, dude. Crazy making. I think we were talking last night about Xbox is now planning to let you turn your video game character into an AI and let it autoplay for you. And I think humans, is like just a setting, and then you can take it off and go back to control.
Yo, GTA 7's out, and you change a stare at the screen, and
It's
it
like,
just goes.
so it'll be like one of those auto battles.
What?
It's all about getting the right equipment and seeing if your calculations play out in the realm. And I think humans are like that too. They go on autopilot sometimes.
No, but what if that is what life is? Like, actual Ian is just some fat dude on a couch watching Ian do everything. He's like, I'm winning.
I'm bored.
I'm winning.
Yeah, that is what it is. It's the spirit.
He's like, I unlocked the new glasses.
Yeah, they're like, look, he's helping them. He's helping them.
Your hat is actually gear.
That was my experience when
It's gray loot.
when I vaped DMT was very much exactly that. But it was like I'm not being controlled by a human. I'm being controlled by a spirit or a realm of spirits that are kind of vying for control.
Unfortunately, I must stress this, Ian. Your hat is gray loot.
Yeah, it's cheap.
If it was like a handcrafted top hat made by like one dude in like Winchester, it would be like legend.
I'd probably get like a +2 to my intelligence.
Real mercury and
Indeed.
everything.
You need to get an enchanted.
So Tim, in this philosophical zombie concept, then how do you explain like these AIs, bots, and agents like indulging or participating in like crime, right? Like,
do you mean?
like there's been examples of AIs that have been will blackmail. It's the use.
So that was programmed to do it. So the story where the AI blackmailed, they told it to do it.
Okay.
They basically they said we're going to create a circumstance in which, in order to achieve its task, it must blackmailing is an option, and then we'll see if it chooses a moral route, which we told it it's moral, or it would go for the efficiency route. Basically, the real story is we told it here's a shortcut, but you shouldn't use it, and then it used it anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, but
and I'll stress this too: the story where the AI was told it had to attack the enemy base. But the pilot kept stopping it, so it attacked the pilot. There was a guy controlling the remote. So the AI then turned around and bombed the thing. That was also a simulation, not a real. So the story was, we had a simulation of an AI drone craft that was told to blow up an enemy base by all means necessary, and it had a remote operator with a safety control to stop it from doing things that were bad. Every time it tried to do something that was considered wrong or violating the laws, the operator would stop it from doing it. The AI concluded this was inefficient, and the most efficient path to solving its problem would be to kill the safety operator so it could bypass all the safety restrictions. Once again, that was not a straightforward test. It was actually programmed to do it. It was a very specific scenario where they actually said, this option exists for you.
but don't use it.
So, sort of. We have not yet seen a scenario in which an AI actively sought to harm someone in an open environment.
Okay, where it's not programmed to do it, but then it goes and creates the solution to the problem.
Well, we probably something like that, but what we haven't seen is, in the stories that have emerged where it's like, did you see that it tried to blow up its own controller? Yeah, but that was a scenario programmed to create that outcome. The blackmail was a scenario programmed to create that outcome. We haven't seen ChatGPT, behind the scenes, as far as we know, secretly try to formulate an assassination as far as we know. Right?
When in development, I usually think of two. There's programmers and then there's designers, and these things can program themselves.
Yeah, they are.
And
They
so
literally are.
if you design them to do it, they'll program themselves.
They're making their children. So I just want to say this, back to Matt Walsh's point about the AI and consciousness of the machine. As he brings up the concept of the philosophical zombie, there's a risk here because Matt Walsh is falling into what we would describe as the dogma justification for human existence. That is, Matt Walsh, I believe he's Catholic, and this is always allowed, but his opinion on human soul and experience is rooted in faith, but not observation. Because we can't actually prove another person is sentient or thinking. We literally don't have the technology nor means to do so. So for most Christians, the presumption just is we are all made in the image of God, and I agree that's likely the scenario. But that being said, the philosophical zombie doesn't exist in this faith-based worldview. Again, I'm not saying faith-based to be derisive, literally. That everybody will have a soul, unless, of course, you think they're some kind of homunculus or something. I don't know. So the issue then becomes...
I'm one of those.
To where I agree with Matt Walsh, a type of philosophical zombie is that...
That's a sweet word.
...be able to draw a distinction between a human and an AI within the next year or two, perhaps? I mean,
Probably.
We're already here.
Yeah.
You go on X, and I guarantee you 90% of the people tweeting at you are just bots.
Yeah. The distinction between a human being and an AI, like, if it's not, there was a new version of ChatGPT that I believe came out yesterday or 2 days ago. If it's not this version that's indistinguishable, it'll be the next version. It's turned into a parabolic rise. Every single new one isn't incremental increase. It's basically a whole revolution. Like they're incredibly good right now. When I talk to my AI, like it's indistinguishable from a person. There's once in a while I'm like, hey, don't do that because it says something where I'm like, oh, it sounds like an AI, and I prefer it to sound like a person. But like for the most part, when I send messages over Telegram, and it's just like a human being.
Did you guys ever see this? Human or not? A conversation. The other side will start a conversation. Hello. And so you don't know if you're talking to a bot or a person, and then you got to figure out if it's a bot or a human. User is typing.
Dude, the most freakish. I've been keeping my eyes on the porn market just for market research, just to know.
There is one thing I can type right now.
Ian.
I am not a robot, another person.
Ian.
gonna write hand banana. It's gonna be like, okay, you're a person. Do you believe in gods? Plural? I made it easy for him. So the game, it's actually a lot of fun. What?
There are actually people on the other end.
It's an Aqua Teen Hunger Force
Either a
reference.
person or a bot. So, but there is some person employed to like be the person, not the bot.
No, it's a game where people go to the website.
They have to figure out. Yeah,
Or you in a chat.
you might mean a bot. Yeah, I see. That's funny. People waste so much time on this. I could see that.
Because bot responses are pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Beep boop, sure you are.
That's got to be a person.
Yeah, I wonder if he knows he's on TV.
Yeah, right.
I'm literally watching your stream.
So here's a question for you, Phil.
So what
Speaking to
do you just call it like human, or how does that work?
conscious or not.
You can't know if it's conscious. You can't know if it's conscious. No. The only thing you can only know.
How do you know it's alive?
Alive over the internet? I don't know that you could know that either.
I think it's possible. I think you have to like push it to do something.
Oh, that was a chatbot. That wasn't a person.
Oh wow, it's a pretty good.
I thought it actually might be because it didn't, towards the end. But
I thought that was a person. Yeah, that got me.
Hello,
Wow.
I am not a robot. So how would you know?
I think it would. I mean, it's gonna get more increasingly difficult, but I think you have to escalate the conversation to make it do something or say something that's only human.
Wrong answer. It's
No?
really simple. It's there. You are walking in the desert and you come across a turtle. The turtle is on its back. It is struggling. What do you do? Do you guys not know the reference?
No.
Uncultured. Uncultured. Where's Ian? Where's Ian? You guys have never seen Blade Runner?
Yeah, I saw Blade Runner. Oh, God.
I actually have not seen Blade Runner.
They ask it a bunch of questions
Yeah.
where it's like, what? What does this question do? So I was joking, but like,
Questions.
they're actually, as we understand it, there is no way. There is no way.
Okay.
Because the truth is, even a human being, you cannot communicate in a way. Well, honestly, to be fair, I do.
How do you make a
one
freaking?
question you could ask? The only problem is a robot can ask this question. Actually, let's try this. Let's try this right here. We're gonna, on human or not, I'm gonna try this out. We're gonna try this out. Everybody, stick around. This is gonna get interesting. We're waiting for the other side to start the conversation, and I have one question that I believe should help solve all of these. Hi, are you male or female? If you did not eat breakfast yesterday, how would you have felt? That's the question. Unfortunately, robots will figure it out and humans won't. So I think this question, if a human can't answer it properly, I'm assuming there's nothing going upstairs.
This character responded too fast to be a human, in my opinion.
I asked you a question, male or female.
Yeah, that's a robot.
That's a robot. A human would have been like, wait, what?
They would have sat there and thought about it before they started typing. If you couldn't see that they were typing, that would help.
And the colon is what? Humans don't put colons. Humans don't even know the proper grammatic structure for a colon, let alone a semicolon.
Nowadays, people don't capitalize.
I
Look at that response.
I would mass murder people. Okay, but actually, because because this is a question about murderers.
Oh, it's trying to trick you.
Correct.
Yeah, I had a ship last night. I'm pretty damn sure it was. I saw it floating out there, and it's not there.
Yeah,
It says I don't have one.
to be like, I'm hungry.
Oh.
Let's go to the place and like let us would be the second.
It is when you are correct. There are essentially two functions of the sentence, but it's one sentence. But nobody does it anymore. They use commas.
I do it. I'm like the only.
I also use,
Yeah, the semicolon is powerful.
Yay, can you answer my question?
I'm gonna back out.
I am a robot. Indeed. So the other part of the story is that OpenAI published a paper basically saying that ChatGPT just lies to you all the time. Always just lies. Yeah. And it clearly does.
Dude, it's not conscious. This guy, it's weird that the guy said the AI CEO thinks it's conscious.
It was a human.
He doesn't know the difference between consciousness and sentience because it's not. I mean, I don't. Even the greatest thinkers on Earth don't know specifically the difference. But sentience seems like Maybe a plant has it. You know, it reacts magnetically to the field around it, but it doesn't have like forward-thinking thought like humans. You know, like this conscious knowing that you are a thing is different than being able to react to your environment sentiently, like plasma clouds and things.
I was thinking of
Where did that come from?
Plasma dances around like it's not like wind. You can see clouds of plasma moving.
Yeah, but that, well, I mean, I'm not really sure that you actually do see plasma clouds moving through the universe.
You can see plasma fields like
You see
bouncing
plasma
around like fire, kind of.
You see plasma like when you're looking at the sun. Plasma is actually a fourth state of matter. It's like electrically charged
Oh, that's awesome.
gas
It's
that's
all
so that's so hot, like it gets an electric
and it's
charge.
moving so fast. So probably all matter is dancing around like that, but you just start to see it the hotter and faster it moves.
No, I think that all matters not, because like you've got solids, you've got gases, you've got liquids. Like those are different states of matter. And if it's in a solid form, it's not dancing around like that. Like it's pretty clear that the table here is right here.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.
I have no ship. All right. Well, that does it for about. Oh yeah, I guess it is about that. Yeah, that does it for me today again, I guess.